Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. It is Monday, July 28th. Folks, we are on time 5 minutes early. I mean, you gotta give it up to me for that. 5 minutes early. We are here. We are live. Yep, we're early. See, you guys didn't believe when I said I would start coming to work early. I'm here. I know it's like honestly the first time I was early in the past couple of weeks, but still, we're here, we're live, and we're alive. And we got a lot to talk about. There are so many moving parts to this market. I'm sure everyone got some news over the weekend about the EU deal. We talked about it last night on the Future Show. We're going to go deeper tonight into it. Yes, the watch is working. The time is always now, baby. The time is 5 minutes early, and we're here. And so we're going to be talking about the implications of the EU deal and what that means for the broader market. We've got a raging pre-market with some of these stocks that are hitting all-time highs, or at least 52-week highs. The first one I'll show you guys real quick is AMD. Shout out to the advanced money duplicator. 170's got to feel amazing to see what that looks like. But it's incredible. And there's a reason for why AMD is getting this momentum that we'll talk about in a little bit as well. But this is a big week. This is a big week. We have the FOMC meeting. We have 40% of the S&P 500's market cap that will be reporting in terms of earnings. Some big ones for the channel: Robinhood, Grab. You've also got Microsoft, Meta, Amazon, Apple, SoFi tomorrow. That's a big one. PayPal, Spotify. And you got a lot of these big companies that got to put up the numbers. And if they can put up the numbers, given some of the momentum we've got geopolitically around trade deals, I mean, I think we're going higher. I think we're going higher. I think the market thinks we're going higher as well. And maybe we can end out July on a very positive note. So we got a lot to talk about. We have a bunch of analyst upgrades this morning that we'll talk about in regards to the broader market, but also on some specific stocks that are getting some momentum. Nike is up 4% as they got upgraded. Reddit got upgraded. NVIDIA, we did have a headline that took NVIDIA down almost 1% in the pre-markets, and then it recovered, and we'll talk about what's going on with NVIDIA. It's actually a good reason, but it's like being portrayed as a bad reason, so we'll talk about that. But there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to get into. Palantir is at all-time highs in the pre-market, breaking the all-time highs that it hit on Friday. We hit 160 for a brief second. Then we came back down to around 158. We were at 160.83 last night. We hit 161. So Palantir as well doing incredible. Robinhood, big earnings this week, 107.2. You got Grab at 540, Google at 194, SoFi at 21, AMD again at 170. We'll talk about why. NVIDIA did hit 174.95 last night. It did not hit 175. So hopefully we can break through that and see what we get. Reddit's up a little bit. Amazon 233, trying to crack that 235 level. Meta at 715. You got a lot of momentum across the board. SMCI is up 2%. Bitcoin at 119. I mean, Ethereum almost hit 4,000 last night. Wednesday is the 10th birthday of Ethereum. Ethereum right there at 3,900. And so the treasuries for Ethereum are also getting some love. Bitmine right here up about 3%. And SBET, which bought 71,000 more ETH yesterday, is up 5%. So we're going to get into all that, those juicy details, and we'll keep going from there. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Cindy, good morning. What's up? Ethan, good morning. Kirk, good morning. Kyle, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Let me show you guys this picture. Someone tweeted at me this morning, and I always really love and I cherish the messages you guys send when it's showing me. I told you guys this week when it's showing me how you guys watch the content. And it's always super cool. So shout out to Greg, who was watching the pre-market futures last night, early this morning, with his baby girl. So it's awesome, dude. This stuff is so cool. Look at that. She's drinking some milk, and then I'm in the background talking about stock. This baby is going to be richer than all of us. Any of these babies that are subconsciously consuming investment. First of all, the baby's going to be funnier than all of us because obviously they're consuming humor in their subconscious as well, which honestly makes me happier than the money part. But I think they're going to be richer than all of us as well. So rich and funny, you can't ask for anything better. And shout out to Greg. It's always very humbling to see this type of consumption of the content, especially with your loved ones. So really do appreciate it. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about. Thank you everybody for being here. There's going to be a big week. And let's get into everything we got going on. Real quick, the Miami meetup is happening August 23rd, 5 to 11 p.m. If you have already signed up on the meetup form, check your email. If you have not signed up on the form, I will probably put the form out again around Wednesday, Thursday. I just got to give everyone the chance who signed up over the past month the ability to follow directions on that form. There's a couple steps you have to go through in order to reserve your spot in Miami. But 8/23, very, very excited for it. I got a lot of people that have been messaging me with their confirmations, a lot of people that took out flights to come to Miami. Someone's flying in from Sweden. Like, I was just like, all right. I don't think I've ever met anyone from Sweden, so I'm very, very excited to meet the global audience that's coming to Miami. And given Miami is more of like a, little vacation destination, I think some people are making an entire trip out of it. So it'll be fun and very, very excited to see everybody. All right, let's get into it. When am I coming to London? Hopefully next year. Europe, London, all those, Singapore, that is on the goal for next year and on the list. So we're gonna try, but 2026 will probably be a big week of traveling, or a big year of traveling. And we're going to try to make sure we get to see everyone from across the pond. All right, so this EU deal, let's get into it. What are the confines of this deal? Why is the market up? Well, here's what we got. There's a lot of nuance to it, but this is what was formally agreed on yesterday. 15% U.S. tariffs. 15% U.S. tariffs across the board, or on most EU goods, including cars, which is kind of so it's not a flat tariff, but it's on a majority of goods, which is very important. 0 tariffs on key items like aircraft and ship equipment. The EU will lower some tariffs on U.S. farm and industrial goods. Steel and aluminum tariffs will stay at 50%, which is what it's been for the past couple of months. The EU will invest $600 billion into the private sector when it comes to the United States private economy. You could imagine they would be buying a lot of things in regards to chips. And then $750 billion, this is the big one, in U.S. energy purchases over 3 years. The EU gets a lot of their LNG from Russia, so I think this was one of the main negotiating points by the Trump administration to say, hey, you already buy a ton of stuff from Russia. You do buy a lot of LNG from us, but what if you increased your LNG intake from us instead of Russia? And maybe that would get us closer to a deal. And it seems like that's what got done. Here is Trump and the EU president yesterday talking about this deal, and then we'll keep going from there.
Else? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the EU Commission President. What are the U.S. concessions? What is the U.S. giving up in the deal, if anything?
So the starting point was an imbalance, a surplus on our side and a deficit on the US side. And we wanted to rebalance the trade relation. And we wanted to do it in a way that trade goes on between the two of us across the Atlantic, because the two biggest economies should have a good trade flow between us. And I think we hit exactly the point we wanted to find. Rebalance, but enable trade on both sides, which means good jobs on both sides of the Atlantic, means prosperity on both sides of the Atlantic, and that was important for us.
And again, the energy is a very important component because we have more energy than anybody else in that sense. And I think it was very wise that they buy a lot of energy, and it's great stuff, and it solves a lot of problems. So that was a great decision, I think.
Okay, so that's kind of the hallmarks of the deal, being able to get that $750 billion in energy. Now, a lot of people are calling BS on this, and I think for good reason. Obviously, the EU investing this much money definitely gets people to be skeptical. Here is a European journalist and something they posted yesterday as a result of the sources they talked to, and here's what they said. The European Commission clarifies that the $600 billion investment pledge under the EU-US trade deal is simply an intention, not a guarantee. The quote that they got is, it's not something the EU as a public authority can guarantee. It's something based on the intention of private companies. Now, that's kind of obvious, right? The EU can't literally say, hey, we're going to dump $600 billion into the United States, because they're not the ones that are dumping the money. It should be private companies. But the EU's intention, at least in terms of the framework of the deal, is to try to convince a lot of the European companies to privately invest $600 billion into the United States. He then says, it seems the same logic will apply to the pledge to buy $700 billion of US-made energy. The quote is, it's clear it's not the EU that buys the energy. We can help with aggregate demand. We can look at bottlenecks, but it will have to be bought by private companies, says a senior official. And then on NATO, one thing that Trump didn't mention in that clip is that they will be spending more on defense. The quote is, that was an expression of expectation on the part of the president that increased defense expenditure would benefit the U.S. defense companies because of the quality of U.S. defense equipment, but there was no pledge on weapons and ammunition, contrary to what Trump said. So look, you definitely have some perspectives from EU officials that are not literally saying, hey, we are definitely going to be spending what amounts to almost $1.5 trillion in the U.S. markets. But the intention is there. And I think when it comes to market perception versus reality, honestly, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, I don't think you can convince anyone to just spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. And we'll talk more about the nuance of the Japan stuff, because I finally got some clarity on what's going on with Japan putting in $500 billion and giving the US 90% of the profits. Like, that's not true. We got some more clarity on it, and we'll talk about that later as well. But the market perception is, if you can at least get to some framework of an agreement. By the way, Besant's in Stockholm right now, getting ready to talk to China to try to get to a better framework of an agreement than what they had back in June. Then I think the market can move forward. So even if the EU is not literally going to be spending the amount of money that Trump said they were going to be spending, if they even spend anywhere near that amount, maybe even half of that amount, I think the market would like it, because it avoids the tariffs, which is why the president of the European Union said that they want to balance trade relations, because they don't want to deal with the tariffs. And then it also gives you a framework to be able to move forward and just get through this time. And eventually, maybe you'll renegotiate in the future, but at least you will avoid 30% tariffs across the board. Now, one of the things the EU president also said in that clip is that the United States has a massive deficit while the EU has a surplus, not in services where the US has a surplus because we sell a lot of the technology products, but rather in physical goods, agriculture, auto, etc. And her argument was that if we can balance that surplus and deficit to an extent, that is why we are willing to work with the United States and be able to invest as much as we're investing when it comes to energy. And so logically, I don't think it's the craziest idea for the European Union to say, hey, we will buy more from the United States because we have such a massive surplus with the United States. But obviously, it's going to have to be seen over the coming years if it's legitimately the amount of money that the EU is pledging to be able to spend. And I think given Trump has shown that he will actually implement tariffs, again, we're going to see on August 1st how the tariffs get implemented across the board when it comes to Cambodia and the Philippines and all these other countries. The EU definitely wants to avoid that. So it makes sense for them to at least agree on principle that this is a deal that's going to be happening. As a result, the markets love it. The markets love it, and that's why we are green in the pre-markets right now. This is going to be one of the biggest week for earnings. If earnings can live up to the hype, along with us potentially getting another deal, maybe with China, Canada, Mexico, Australia. I think India is probably the next big one we're going to get. If not that, then South Korea. That I think would be very bullish. The point is, we got a Japan deal, we got an EU deal, even if it's not set in stone in terms of exactly what's happening. Market perception is, okay, we are more closer to a deal than not, which means it's hard to be super bearish on the concept of eventually landing some of these trade deals. And as a result, you're seeing the market really get some benefits. But not only are you getting benefits from a geopolitical perspective, individual companies are also gaining some momentum. Let's discuss AMD real quick, because this piece of news last night is so unbelievably bullish for AMD. And that is why that stock is getting some momentum right here. According to industry sources, this was released last night in regards to AMD. The average selling price of an AMD's recently released new chip, M1350, has increased by 10,000 from the previous estimate to 25,000. Experts believe that the price increase of AMD's recent chip has increased more than the market initially expected because it implements performance that is not inferior to Blackwell, which is NVIDIA's best chip. Although it is still 30% cheaper than the Blackwell B200, it is a significant price increase. The MI350 is a chip mainly used in AI data centers as has improved AI computing performance by up to 4 times and inference by up to 35 times. The estimates were 9.5 billion of yearly sales on the AMD MI350. That estimate is now 15 billion. And that is why I think AMD is touching 170. It's at 169.90. It did touch 170 about 5 minutes ago. And it's getting a lot of this momentum as well. You got all the geopolitical stuff that's helping in regards to the entire market. But that report that came out last night, you increase earnings estimates by another $5 billion for fiscal year 2025. I mean, yeah, that should healthily increase the multiples. Or even if you keep the multiples the same, that should just increase the overall price you get at the end when it comes to AMD. So this news came out last night, or at least it hit the news wires last night, and that's why it's getting some momentum. And I think that's why AMD is also kind of like outperforming NVIDIA over the past couple of weeks as well. I mean, NVIDIA has done a really nice job settling into that $4 trillion market cap. Now it's at $4.2 trillion. But AMD right here is up about 2%, NVIDIA up about 0.5% in the pre-markets. Yes, AMD's earnings is also next week. And if Lisa Su can confirm the price increase that they put on these chips, and that, to me, that just shows, A, they have pricing power. B, if the chips actually are competitive with Blackwell, I mean, dude, that's a big deal. It's a very big deal. Again, we don't have any confirmation on this yet by the company. I'm sure we'll figure out over the coming weeks. But if that's true, that they have some level of competition when it comes to Blackwell, I don't think it's bearish NVIDIA, but I think it's super bullish NVIDIA. Or super bullish AMD. And because of that, then we should probably get some more momentum in regards to AMD as well. So that's what we got on AMD. Now, speaking of chips, Tesla, let's cover this real quick because Tesla announced some crazy stuff last night. Did not expect to get this headline, but this is just another reason why it's very hard to fade Tesla, even with the valuation. Samsung, Tesla and Samsung, $16.5 billion deal is what they signed to produce their next-gen AI6 chips at the company's upcoming fab in Taylor, Texas. Musk said he'll walk the line himself to help optimize production, calling the deal strategically important. Samsung's foundry, Samsung shares, by the way, up 7% of the pre-market, which has struggled with underutilization, now gets a major boost, and the agreement runs through 2033. Elon Musk also confirmed this last night as the news broke, and he essentially said, we need more vendors. So he said Samsung's giant new Texas fab will be dedicated to making Tesla's next generation AI6 chip. The strategic importance of this is hard to overstate. Samsung currently makes AI4. TSMC will make AI5, which just finished design initially in Taiwan and then Arizona. Samsung agreed to allow Tesla to assist in maximizing manufacturing efficiency. This is why when humanoid robotics scale, I think Tesla's going to be a massive player because Elon knows how to scale manufacturing at just like one of the most sophisticated levels on the planet. He says this is a critical point as I will personally walk the line to accelerate the pace of progress, and the fab is conveniently located not far from my house. Elon's net worth, by the way, is now $405 billion. So, I mean, this is a major deal. It also shows the importance of Tesla as a company that needs these chips, right? It's not just all going to be from NVIDIA. They have to go through a variety of vendors and distributors to make sure they have the capacity to fulfill the demand they have, or at least that the demand they think is going to be coming soon when it comes to Dojo, training FSD models, training Optimus, etc. And it's just very hard to fade the company when you realize they're making massive, massive multi-year commitments to be able to make sure that they are ready to go when it comes to their S-curves that are not here yet. They still have negative earnings growth, but when those S-curves take place, you're going to need chips. And it looks like Tesla's going to make sure they have their chips. Now, this is not necessarily a net positive for Tesla. Obviously, they're spending $16 billion. That's money that's leaving their cash flows, right? Because it's going to be going into CapEx. But it shows you, for investors that are excited for the future of Tesla being able to have the capacity that's necessary to scale, it looks like this deal with Samsung is only going to get them further there. Tesla right here is up about 1.4% in the pre-markets. Yes, Samsung does have a deal with Palantir as well. So, Palantir has always been indirectly tied to Tesla because the Sparks, Nevada factory that is working on the batteries for Tesla, Palantir runs the entire digital operations of that factory. And Palantir has a deal to open up or to become the backbone of the Wichita, Kansas factory for Panasonic Energy, which is building the batteries for Tesla. So, I mean, I don't know if Palantir is going to be involved in this deal in any way, but Palantir always has had some type of relationship working with Tesla. And so it's just a good deal. It's a good deal for Tesla, and it makes a lot of sense for why Tesla is embracing this at this stage of their journey. AMD right here, 169.95, the S&P 638, and then Palantir right here, 160.76. Trump is meeting the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom right now. Here's a clip of them talking right before they began their meeting, discussing the state of U.S. and UK trade relations.
Well, we're in great shape. The trade deal was made with UK. The Prime Minister did a great job. They've been trying to make that deal for 12 years, and he got it done. So everybody respects it. It's going to be a lot of jobs for here, and great for America. And, in terms of even the relationship, our relationship is unparalleled, but it keeps it even closer. When you're able to have a good trade deal, it keeps it even closer. Well, we're in.
You got the nice little music in the background as well. So there you go. They're in Scotland. Trump is meeting right here with the Prime Minister. Or I don't think these guys are in Scotland. Besant is in Scotland. But Trump right there is meeting with the UK Prime Minister. Now, the other big deal from a geopolitical perspective outside of the EU deal is that US and China are launching new talks on extending their tariff truce. And there likely is going to be a 90-day pause in the current tariffs that exist that were supposed to go into effect on August 12th. Which is really bullish because the market has more time to see what the US and China are going to come up with. Here's a little bit of coverage on that, and then we'll keep going from there. One second. Let me share that real quick. All right, here we go.
Volunteered for it. Look, high stakes in Stockholm today. It's been a bumpy ride, as you guys know, getting here so far. You remember back in May, we had those negotiations in Geneva, and just a couple of days after a deal was announced there, we saw both sides accuse each other of violating the terms of the agreement. So we were sort of back to square one in London in June. That's where we got that temporary deal, and that deal was for 55% tariffs from the U.S., 10% tariffs from the Chinese. The deal also included U.S. access to rare earth minerals and Chinese access to U.S. universities. That deal, though, was temporary. The deadline was August 12th. So the big question here in Stockholm, guys, is whether they can kick that can down the road, extend that deadline perhaps another 90 days. The expectation here is that they will do that. But there's a whole bunch of other things on the table here, including potentially the idea of the fate of TikTok. Is that in this negotiation? Is that not part of this track? We don't know for sure. Also, Chinese purchases of Iranian and Russian oil, that's possibly on the table for discussion. Don't know for sure where that will land as well. And then the big question, guys, is a Trump-Xi Jinping meeting, whether that could happen as early as October. Secretary Bessent has said it's definitely not happening before the Labor Day holiday in the U.S., but could it happen after that? That seems to be in the air here, at least in Stockholm, as these two sides come to negotiate. They're going to be meeting at the Prime Minister's house here in Stockholm. It's the Rosenbad. It's just here to my right. We expect the delegations to arrive momentarily. Haven't seen much movement so far throughout the throughout the morning, but we'll keep our eyes open for that, guys, as we expect both sides to meet for a session that could last as late as midnight. That's how late they went in London a month ago. So we'll see what they do here in Stockholm, guys. Back over to you.
So Bessent is already there. Again, the rumor from the South China Morning Post yesterday was that there is going to be a 90-day pause on the tariffs unless they come to some like amazing deal in this agreement in Stockholm. I would imagine that they will delay the tariffs by 90 days. The problem with China is that we already came to some type of an agreement in Geneva, in Switzerland, like a month and a half ago. But then both sides accused the other side of violating the agreement. So they're going for a second round of negotiations. And I think NVIDIA and the chips are going to be included here because Trump just got rid of the export controls. So now that's probably going to be a better form of framework of a deal. It was always weird that when they came up with the agreement back at the end of June, there was no like explanation about what happens to the chips, and the chips are like the biggest part of the deal. So I would imagine we're going to get a lot more clarity, and as a result of that clarity, that should be better for the broader markets, definitely for the semiconductors in terms of an understanding of what's going to happen to them going forward. Now, one big headline on NVIDIA this morning, which is like not really bearish, but NVIDIA did take a little bit of a dip in the pre-market when the initial headline came out, is Jefferies is saying NVIDIA's H20 chip supply cannot match China's demand. So Jefferies says NVIDIA has about 900,000 H20 chips, but China's demand is 1.8 million units. So you need about double that. Despite supply limits, Chinese firms prefer NVIDIA chips due to its CUDA ecosystem, superior performance, and limited local alternatives. Jefferies expects strong demand to continue even for downgraded future chips like the upcoming B30. It raised China's 2025 AI capex forecast by 40% to $108 billion. To give you some context on America versus China, China is going to be spending $108 billion. Google's going to be spending $85 billion, which is it's pretty bad. I mean, Google's spending almost 85% of China's entire budget on capex, with no signs of slowing AI investments. So yeah, exactly. AMD, I think the reason why AMD is up right here in the pre-markets is because AMD, if the report that came out last night that says AMD is just as good as Blackwell, which again, there's no confirmation on that, but that's the report that we had, that could be exactly where AMD comes in. But the fact that NVIDIA cannot handle the demand, but the Chinese tech firms still want NVIDIA over a Huawei, and not the good NVIDIA, like the bootleg NVIDIA, not the bootleg, but you get my point, right? Not Blackwell, but H20, right? The like 2 generations ago chip. The fact that they want that because of CUDA, the ecosystem for developers, etc., just shows how much of a moat and still how unbelievably undervalued I think NVIDIA is. And it's incredible to be alive at a time where a company like NVIDIA is having this type of demand. And that demand is not slowing down by any sense of the imagination. And when we speak about CapEx, take a look at this chart right here. This is the Magnificent Seven's CapEx as a percentage of trailing revenues. Meta spends 25% of their revenue on CapEx, Microsoft 22%, Google 16%, Amazon 14%, Tesla 10%, Apple 2.8%, and then NVIDIA obviously 2.5%. NVIDIA is not really buying the chips. They're making the chips. The trend right there is Apple is spending only 2.8% of their revenues on CapEx. That's also probably why the market is not viewing them as like a massive AI play yet. But Meta and Microsoft are spending almost 1/4 of their revenues on CapEx. This is just getting started. This is just getting started. It does not feel like it's going anywhere. You got a lot of people touting bubble right now. I don't see the bubble when you got the Max 7 trading at these valuations, which are at best, Tesla's obviously the most expensive, but that one has the most potential. But Apple's at 30 times. Everything else is just below 30 times. I think Amazon's at like 33. These are not crazy euphoric valuations on the Max 7. With the propensity to spend, with the balance sheets to be able to continue to buy back their shares, with the free cash flows that rival other countries' GDPs. I mean, it is one of the most exciting markets to live through. And it just seems like more momentum is on the way as we get trade deals done and as we also hopefully get earnings growth, which will be very important. Speaking of earnings growth, it's a big week for earnings. It's a big week for earnings. So you have 37%, almost 40% of the S&P 500 that is going to be reporting this week. Obviously, we got a lot of big deals coming up. Robinhood, SoFi, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Reddit, Coinbase, MicroStrategy. We got a lot of these companies. Grab will be reporting as well on Wednesday. And so this is the Super Bowl. This is the Super Bowl week. This will be the week where we're going to need to see some momentum. I'm going to put this poll right here in the chat kind of to get people's perspectives on this, but we got 4 of the Mag 7 reporting. Here is my question. Which one outperforms on earnings from these prices? Which one outperforms on earnings? Apple, Meta, Amazon, or Microsoft? If I had to take a random, not a random guess, but like a guess off the top of my head, I might go Meta. And the only reason I'm going to go Meta is because although their operating margins might take a little bit of hit because of the increase of labor costs, and we're not talking about, a couple people making a couple $100,000 or a couple million. We're talking about hundreds of millions. It has to be at this point, billions of dollars that they are investing into talent. I think the street's going to just ask Zucks, hey, why are you spending this much money? And then I think Zuck's going to just crush it when he explains the answer on the earnings call. And I think he's going to be like, hey, we're crushing on our earnings. We're growing 20%. And I tried Llama. Llama didn't work. Open source models are not the way. I'm going to build a closed source model. And I'm going to beat OpenAI. And I'm going to beat Gemini. And I'm going to beat XAI. And I'm going to win. And I have an unlimited checkbook. I don't have to raise any money from VCs. I can just keep spending. And I think in some way there is a world in which investors are like, all right, go for it. Here's more money. And what will really get Meta to outperform is if they just split the damn stock. If they take this stupid $700 and make it 70, I think that will get the market excited as well. So ASML is that getting a little bit in the pre-markets. ASML, again, had a nasty couple weeks after their earnings. ASML, yeah, not bad. 3.6. All right. Looks like NVIDIA, AMD, and the semis in general taking ASML up a little bit. I think if they do a stock split, this thing could really have some fun. But I think Zucks might just want to see his stock go to 1,000, and he's not going to split it. And he's just going to make us wait. My next best guess, honestly, would be Microsoft, because I think Azure is going to crush. And I know Microsoft's at all-time highs, but I think there's a reason they're at all-time highs. They are really showing cloud acceleration at a massive scale. I mean, if Google's growing cloud at almost 35%, Microsoft's going to be able to put up those numbers. And as long as they do, I think cloud is what continues to maintain momentum for MSFT. And that one should not do too bad. PayPal just announced something. Let me pull up PayPal real quick. Is that moving? That's up a little bit right here. So PayPal World came out last week, and that was their new interoperable ecosystem between Venmo, PayPal, and a bunch of other providers. Here's the news just now. PayPal enables U.S. merchants to accept payment in over 100 cryptocurrencies. It's called Pay with Crypto, enabling instant crypto to stablecoin for our fiat conversion, supporting transactions across 100 plus cryptocurrencies and wallets such as Coinbase and MetaMask. So there you go. PayPal continuing to embrace the crypto revolution. I mean, they have no choice. They kind of have to. If crypto's taken over the world, PayPal cannot just become a payments provider that doesn't embrace crypto. And so I'd imagine that embracing of crypto is not going anywhere. Speaking of crypto, let's get a little bit of an update from Pomp in terms of what's going on with the crypto market and where he thinks Bitcoin is going over the coming weeks.
They can grow in market cap size in terms of how many people are using them, but I don't think people really use stable coins as a comparison to Bitcoin or altcoins where they're looking to try to drive some sort of financial performance.
What type of I hesitate to call it derivatives, but there's a lot of different Bitcoin-based products coming out at this point. What do you think has staying power?
Yeah, well, if you really just look at what's happened over the last 5 to 7 years, is Bitcoin essentially went from a contrarian trade to a consensus trade. Everyone now, for the most part, is convinced that this thing is going to be around for a long time. And now what you see is Wall Street, who really was kind of ignoring it or trying to stiff arm Bitcoin, has now said, wait a second, let's open up the doors and let's embrace this thing because they figured out how to make money. And so you're seeing Bitcoin put into the Wall Street wrappers. First, you saw it with the ETFs. Now you're seeing it with public companies. You also have heard people announce things like Bitcoin and real estate funds. I think you're going to continue to see Wall Street take Bitcoin and put it in every single corner of the traditional financial system, because ultimately Bitcoin brings volatility. Bitcoin brings financial return in a way that they're not used to seeing. And so I think that Bitcoin is something that is going to bring more customers, more assets, and more profits for these Wall Street institutions. And that's their job, is to go figure out how to grow their business, and Bitcoin can help them do that.
I mean, how many strategy, and it used to be MicroStrategy, how many treasury officials at different companies are thinking about somehow not going exactly what strategy, but putting Bitcoin into the treasury? Is that?
Yeah, well, look, I think the bigger conversation here is there should be way more pressure on the public company CEOs who are leaving a very large portion of their economic value for their shareholders in dollars. U.S. dollar has lost 30% of its purchasing power in the last 5 years or so, since 2020. The S&P 500 denominated in Bitcoin is down 85% since 2020. Bitcoin is a much better store of value than U.S. dollars.
I guess people would say, are you?
And, you know, he's not necessarily wrong on that. The companies that have capitalized their balance sheet with Bitcoin have, quite frankly, changed their entire trajectory. One of those companies being MSTR. MSTR got a 680 price target. Cantor Fitzgerald, here's what they said. MSTR created the segment, and it has a Bitcoin stack that is unlikely to ever be matched by another entity, assuming MicroStrategy acquires 20 billion worth of Bitcoin a year. This puts MSTR on track to reach 1 million Bitcoin in just over 3 years. They have about 600,000 right now. And that assumes Bitcoin compounds at 30%. The sheer size of MicroStrategy's Bitcoin stack combined with capital markets innovation makes MicroStrategy a must-own name in the space, in our view. If Bitcoin is going to 1 million, which we think is highly likely at some point in the future, MicroStrategy could become one of the largest companies in the world. So, I mean, look, it ultimately depends on, you know, where Bitcoin ends up over the coming years. But with this administration and the amount of innovation that they are launching when it comes to crypto, or at least regulatory frameworks that they're now creating the freedom for, it does seem like a company giving a 3% dividend is not going to be as attractive as companies recapitalizing their balance sheet with Bitcoin. There's always going to be a market for that type of fixed income, but there's going to be another market that's emerging when it comes to Bitcoin. And that is creating some momentum. Shout out to Farzad. He says, Amit, thoughts on Tesla deal with Samsung in relation to NVIDIA? I don't see it as bearish NVIDIA. I see the entire market as just needing so much supply of the commodity that is the oil of what seems to be at least the next 10 to 20 years of our lifetimes, which is chips, right? Oil was the lifeline of the 1900s, and now chips are the lifeline of what seems to be the 2020s. And I think there's just going to need to be a lot of demand. And if Tesla, you know, Tesla working with Samsung just means they wanted to diversify their vendors. They wanted to get specific. And remember, Elon said, I wanted to be able to personally walk the line of the Samsung factory and use Tesla's manufacturing efficiencies to make sure that they are in line with what Tesla's vision is. I don't know if Jensen would have let Elon do that, right? If he wanted to have a specific deal with NVIDIA. So Tesla's getting a lot of autonomy here in terms of working with Samsung. And I think that's another reason for why they want to work with them. Obviously, Elon will probably continue to be buying a lot of GPUs as well for XAI and Tesla. But I think there's just a lot of momentum in chips. You can't fade the AI trade. And for those calling it a bubble, I just think there's a lot of there's a lot of lack of nuance when saying it's a bubble when you look at these numbers, whether it's Oracle, TSM, NVIDIA, AMD. It's like it is hard to read bubble, especially when we're seeing the ROI. And the ROI on these chips is starting to become monumental from a cloud perspective, advertising perspective, humanoid robots, obviously. Like there's just so many different verticals where it's going to take off. And I think that's justifying the CapEx investment. Open Door right here, up about 7%. That one is green. A lot of the meme stocks have kind of died out in terms of, you know, excitement. Krispy Kreme has not really moved that much. Kohl's not really moving that much either. You had Open Door You had Faraday Future. I mean, a lot of these meme stocks are now starting to come back down to reality, and people are just not caring about them as much. Open Door, I think, has the best one that has a community that could maybe take this one higher. But I guess the week we had of these meme stocks pumping 20% every single day is kind of chilling out, which is, I think, rather healthy for the market. SBET right here is up 4.5%. They did buy 70,000 Ethereum yesterday. BMNR is at 40.64. That's up 2.1%. Again, Ethereum trying to go for 4,000. And then BTBT, that stock is up 3%, as these three are the major Ethereum treasuries. Although there's a lot more Ethereum treasuries that are coming out. Peter Thiel likely paid $4.50 for the 5 million BMNR shares that he bought. From what I understood by reading through a couple of the SEC filings and looking at the private placements that he had in regards to his association with Founders Fund, most likely got them at $4.50. Tom Lee is the only one who bought at $44 on the open market. He bought about $200,000 worth of it. And so, again, my biggest issue with the treasuries is that they will accelerate massively if Ethereum accelerates. But again, I sound like a broken record, but I think it's important to say this because we've seen the story play out with MicroStrategy. They will dilute. They will dilute like there is no tomorrow. The name of the game is getting as much Ethereum as possible. So if BMNR pumps 10%, Tom Lee's going to tell his folks to dump some shares. And they have $2 billion worth that they can do. SBET goes up, even though the head of BlackRock's digital asset strategy went to SBET, which is super bullish. They're going to dump. They have $5 billion of a mixed shelf offering that they can dump at any time. So you have to be ready for the dump, because it's going to happen because they don't have any other ways to raise money to buy Ethereum. And you have to be okay with it because they need to buy more Ethereum to get the alpha. So that's my only concern with the treasuries. But outside of that, I think long-term, if Ethereum, gets to 15, 20,000, they will outperform as well. So yes, Tom Lee also got an at 450 as well. He also bought at 450. Kathy Wood bought at 40. That's correct. And Kathy Wood doesn't look like she's selling. I mean, they announced it like a partnership. Like, it wasn't just she's buying a stock. They literally announced it as like a BMNR ARC partnership. So to me, it looks more in line with she's planning to hold these shares for a long time. Okay, a couple of other macro reads. We got 13 minutes until the market opens. Goldman Sachs, we expect tariffs to push inflation above 3%, even as underlying trend continues to fall towards 2%. So Goldman Sachs basically saying, hey, don't get so excited about a rate cut, because although we think there are cuts coming, we also think that inflation will accelerate with tariffs, and we need to be a bit more cautious on the idea that tariffs are not going to be inflationary. You have other people that have different perspectives, but Goldman Sachs says, hey, inflation might be sticky at this 2.5 to 7% range. Now, Morgan Stanley came out this morning. Mike Wilson said S&P 500 will hit 7,200 by mid-2026. We are getting the $7,000 targets that are coming back into action. He said this will be driven by a rolling recovery in earnings, solid EPS growth, and supported macro trends like AI adoption, dollar weakness, and expected Fed cuts. He sees mid-teens EPS growth, which is not that bad. With recent earnings revisions confirming momentum, Wilson favors industrials as his top sector. Despite risks like high rates and tariffs, he expects pullbacks to be brief and recommends buying all dips. And I think when you get a lot of analysts that come out that say, hey, if there is a dip in August or September and there's some weakness, you buy it because that's what you got to do in this market, then I think we're going to get even more momentum from the perpetual bid that exists on this market. And not only Morgan Stanley, Oppenheimer came out as well, and they raised their price target to 7,100 because they continue to believe, hey, there is likely going to be a lot more bullish momentum in the broader markets. So yeah, it is going to be very interesting to see kind of how this week plays out, because we've got a lot of earnings coming up. But I think the most important thing is going to be if we can at least deliver on earnings. Whatever happens with price action is irrelevant, as long as earnings are decent enough to match market expectations. 62% for a chance on the September Fed cut. There's a 2% chance for July 30th, which is in 2 days. July 30th, we will have the FOMC meeting. I think Jay Powell is going to be pretty regular. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of a hint of dovishness so that we expect the August cut, but I don't think he's going to be that dramatic up or down. I think he will be happy that Trump is getting some of these trade deals so that the tariff inflation expectations can start to come down a bit. But it's still up in the air. I mean, 60% is not like 95% for a September cut. Bank of America, they put out a report there this morning. They're still sticking to the fact that we will likely not get a rate cut this year. And I mean, we're going to have to see if Bank of America is right or wrong. I think this market is like, the market kind of needs a rate cut. It's priced for at least 2 rate cuts. And so hopefully we end up getting that rate cut going into September. Here's an update on the US-EU trade deal as well for everyone who's joining, and then we will keep going from there.
Hey, Carl, that's right. Here in Stockholm, we saw the arrival of the U.S. delegation just a short time ago. We saw Treasury Secretary Bessent exit the motorcade, have a long handshake with the Prime Minister of Sweden before walking into the building. The building they're using here is the Prime Minister's residence and office building. So this is sort of the equivalent of the White House in Sweden. Both delegations are here. We also saw the Chinese delegation arrive. He Lifeng, who is the Vice Premier of China, arrived to lead their delegation. Interesting sort of behind the scenes TikTok on this. All the talks seem to have started about 2.5 hours after we were led to expect that they might. Not sure we can read anything into that. I am told by an official that the talks have begun inside the building behind us. And I can also tell you that this delegation is a little bit smaller than the delegation that we expected. That is Howard Lutnick, who we were led to believe would be here, is not actually here for these talks, guys. So unclear, why the composition of the U.S. delegation changed at the last minute, but that is what we were told by officials, is that Jameson Greer and Treasury Secretary Bessent are leading the U.S. talks here. Back over to you.
Eamon, you had a good breakdown of some of the potential silos of discussion, including TikTok, Russian oil, in addition to everything else regarding tariffs.
Yeah, there's so much on the table between these two countries. And what we can't really get a good fix on, Carl, is what exactly is part of this conversation? What is considered a separate track? And can you really have a separate track between the U.S. and Chinese delegations when it comes to these conversations, given that ultimately we do expect this is going to have to come down to a meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump at some point, possibly in the fall. People are pointing toward an October date for that. If those two leaders are meeting in the room, then everything in this relationship, security, economic, and everything else is probably going to be on the table. So how much of the discussion they're going to get into in the room here, though, in terms of TikTok and these other things, we don't know the answer to that. We're going to be trying to press for answers as we go along through the day. We are hoping for a briefing, at least from the U.S. side, when talks finish up tonight. It is afternoon here in Stockholm. In London last month, they went until about midnight. So we'll see how late they go here.
Dude, it's pretty incredible. It is pretty incredible that we are here a couple days from August, and it looks like we are going to be getting some major trade deals done. I mean, we have gone on an absolute roller coaster for the far majority of 2025, and for a good 2 months, that roller coaster was to the downside. And if you just kind of held course during that time, it's worked out. Now, I think everyone is concerned about, the biggest thing I think everyone is concerned about is, can we keep these gains, right? Can we keep this momentum, or does it have to go away? Is it all just propped up by stuff, or is it actually, something we can hang our hats on? And I think earnings growth will be the first thing that shows us if we can keep these gains, which will also justify an expansion of the multiple on the S&P 500. If you got earnings growth, people are willing to pay for that earnings. And then two is if money comes to play from the sidelines. And I think money is going to start to come out to play if we get those rate cuts and if we get those trade deals. I mean, one of the reasons why money went to the sidelines was because the trade negotiations felt insane, right? With Trump promising 30, 40, 50% tariffs on all these other countries, and people just didn't want to mess with it. People, and a lot of financial advisors told their wealthy clients to just not take the risk because you want to protect your capital, not risk your capital, and Trump was unpredictable. That unpredictability that retail took a risk on is one of the reasons why retail is outperforming. And now, you're going to get a lot of the big guys that have to chase at these levels. Take a look at Nike right here. JP Morgan upgrading it from 64 to 93. That's why Nike is up in the pre-markets as well. They had a pretty decent earnings a couple weeks ago, but you're going to see more companies say, all right, if the China trade deal is going to come into consideration, if Vietnam's going to be okay, Nike, which makes a lot of their products in China and Vietnam, that might be a tailwind for them versus a headwind. Nike's already beat up so much. You're seeing other parts of the market that are starting to catch a bid. Nike has not been a massive outperformer over the past 5 years. It's definitely not a sign of euphoria. And it's good for a company like Nike to get some momentum. So I think the diversification of this rally as well, the broadening of it, is also very, very important. And I think that's one of the big things that we should all be watching out for, is hey, can we see other companies catch a bid versus the same companies that have been gaining momentum? This week, we have United Health tomorrow, SoFi, PayPal, Spotify, UPS, Visa, Starbucks, Marathon, Cheesecake Factory, Mondelez, Teladoc bookings. We're going to get a lot of consumer companies to see what the state of the consumer is like. We know retail sales crushed it last month. We know some companies like Delta and Levi's have said that the consumer's fine. If we get more of that, then that is a good thing. Then on Wednesday, we got Microsoft, Meta, Robinhood, Qualcomm, ARM. We got a bunch of the semis, a bunch of the Mac 7s, Grab, Wingstop, Etsy, Hershey's. I mean, you got a lot of names that are going to start to show their numbers. And if we can analyze those numbers and see that those numbers are making sense in regards to where the broader market is trading, then I think we can have some fun. Wayne says, you're absolutely right. I borrowed $200,000 from my line of credit mid-April, already paid back $115,000. The value of the account is almost $200,000. Yeah, I mean, look, there are strategic moments to borrow money. Most people should stay away from margin and borrowing capital, because obviously you never want to borrow money without understanding what to do with the money to then pay it back, especially when it comes to investing. But in April, anyone who took out a little bit of a loan to just buy the freaking dip, I mean, whatever you bought, much less if you bought really good names that have, doubled or tripled, you can pay back the loan. And usually with margin loans, you get a relatively cheap interest rate because it's backed by stocks. And then you're able to, use that capital and the profits of that to keep investing and moving forward. Obviously, there's unique situations like April when you can take advantage of it, and margin's not for everyone. But for those that did, I mean, there's a very strategic use of saying, I'm going to lever up in this moment because this is the moment to go long. And there's not many moments like that, especially in a raging bull market. In a raging bull market, to have an opportunity to buy the S&P 500 at 4,800, discounting 2 years worth of earnings. I mean, looking back on it, it is just insanity, but it happened. And then you have, then you have the buy signal given by the man himself, Mr. Trump, who says, hey, it's a great day to buy. It's just crazy. It was absolutely crazy, but it did indeed happen. Ethereum ETF weekly flows, 1.84 billion. I think Ethereum weekly flows are going to continue gaining momentum. Last week was one of the biggest weeks since the 9 months that Ethereum ETFs have launched. Almost $2 billion. Bitcoin gets round about, I would say 3 to 4 billion every week. It varies, but the past couple of weeks they had $2 billion back-to-back days. If Ethereum can start replicating some of those weekly flows like Bitcoin has, I mean, you're going to see a lot of Wall Street start to embrace Ethereum, and hopefully that gets it well above that. I think $4,800 top is where it got to back in 2021. Last time Bitcoin was 4,000 was December 2024. So we haven't seen it since then, and it would be very nice to see how this plays out. Adam says the stock market is the best show on earth. You have to be in the game to win the game, but sometimes it's okay to take a breather, but who knows when it's the right time for each. Yeah, and also again, if you have a lot of money and you didn't go crazy buying the dip in April, that's okay as well, right? Because protecting capital is very important. And sometimes not taking massive amounts of risk is the right thing to do. It just happened to be in April. It was the time. It was the time to buy. And, now a lot of people are getting the benefits of it. And so I think, again, the biggest concern on my mind, and I'm pretty sure everyone else's mind, is can we keep this momentum? And I think we look at a lot of data every week. The momentum, it does not seem to be fake. I keep trying to go back and forth and ask myself, is there something that's propping this up that I haven't thought about? Is there some thing in the background that's going to pop and break? And it's going to be so obvious when it happens. And it's it's not the tariffs that's getting resolved. And I don't think we're going to get another 20% decline where everyone assumes the tariffs are the end of the world. It happened in April. I think it's going to be hard for that to happen again. It's not AI. That's not a bubble. Maybe there's an argument around credit card delinquencies. And we looked at a buy now, pay later chart last week. Almost 25% of a lot of purchases, common purchases like groceries, are buy now, pay later. Maybe that signals some strength or some weakness in the consumer, which could be a crack. But earnings will show us, right? Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, they're going to tell us if the earnings, if the consumer is really bad. And so I think when we get those numbers, we'll see. It's not really the labor market, at least not from the data that I'm seeing. Anecdotally, I know it's a different story, but on the data I'm seeing, the labor market's holding up. And then it's not inflation, because PPI was incredible last week or 2 weeks ago. So was CPI. We're going to get PCE this Friday, and we're going to get the jobs report this Friday as well. As long as all of that holds up, I think there's a world where we can maintain momentum. Oh, wow. JP Morgan came to the party. Look at that. Robinhood upgrade from 47 to 98. I didn't even know JP Morgan still had them at 47. It's nice to see JP Morgan come to the party. All right, we'll try to get a report on why they upgraded Hoodie. But there you go, 47 to 98. Not too bad for JP Morgan. All right, folks, here we go. 20 seconds until this market opens. Let's see if this EU deal can instill confidence in the broader markets. And we're going to find out how the markets react after securing one of the major 7 countries we needed and if this momentum can continue. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is Monday, July 28th, 9:30 a.m. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. Tessie, 317.50. Tessie opens up about 0.5% up. Tesla, 317.50. Meta, 716. That's up 0.5%. SharpLink Gaming, SBET. They bought 70,000 Ethereum last night. They are up 3.7%. They are up 3.7% on the day. So you got a little bit of green, now up 4%. Carnival Cruise, that's flat. S&P 500, that's flat. That was at 640 last night, 637.74, basically at an all-time high. If you don't count what happened in the pre-markets or the overnight hours last night, but it is green and it is flat, nothing too crazy, but we do open green. Open Door, that's up 5%. Ethereum ETF from BlackRock, that's up 6%. Apple goes red. Apple opens up red. Where is Palantir? Do we get 160? We lose 160. We had it last night. We had 161 last night, 159.65. That's giving back a little bit of the gains, but that is still green on the day. NVIDIA, 175. NVIDIA 175. Wow, she's moving from 175. 175.30, 4.28 trillion. 4.28 trillion. And then AMD is probably following. Is AMD following? AMD is following 170. This has got to feel so good for the people that were stuck in Advanced Money Destroyer that has now become Advanced Money Duplicator, baby. 170. It looks like she wants 171. Looks like she wants 171. Palantir goes red. Where is Hoodie? Does Hoodie go red? Hoodie basically going red. I mean, it's up a little bit. It was at 107. Now it's at 105.70. Trying to hold on. NVIDIA just below 175. S&P again, 63.95. Amazon 233. That's green. HIMS is almost at 60. HIMS is 30 cents away from 60. Not bad on HIMS. Bitmine, that's up 3%. Grab goes red by about 1%, 531. They've got earnings on Wednesday. Nebius, that one's flat. Broadcom, all-time highs, 291. ASML, nice little recovery from last week. Still down from 825, but back at 733, not bad. That's up 3%. SMR, that's green. Oklo, that's green. Gold and silver are also down on the day. Shopify's up a little bit. Big Bear AI's up a little bit. Palantir 158. AMD, it looks very close to 171. It touched 170.99. Nike got upgraded today to 93 by JP Morgan. That's why Nike is up 4%. Meta crosses 720. Tesla goes red. Tesla goes red at 315. AMD 171. There she goes. 171 on AMD. 171. Chat says, when do we get mid auctions? Dude, you guys know there's actually a college for people that want to become an auctioneer. There's legit, we looked it up a couple months ago. There's legit a college you can go to become an auctioneer. I was like, wow, I need to see if I can get my certificate from that place one day. That looks pretty cool. S&P 500, 637. Hoodie 105. Palantir is still a top 20 company in the United States of America. It is like top 25 worldwide. $372 billion market cap. Again, Piper Sandler initiated a 170 target, and I think that's what got the stock really moving last week as well. AMD right here, just below 171. AMD is in my public stock market draft portfolio, so that's really helping out. We'll take a look at that stock market draft in a second, but that one, pretty incredible stuff. Oscar is down. UNH is flattish, slightly up. We'll see how that performs tomorrow after they have earnings. That's up about 0.85%, 283 right here. Where is Lemonade? Lemonade is down 1%. Lemonade down 1%. Where is Ethereum? Ethereum, a little bit of a red candle from 39.40 to 38.20. So that's down. Cheniere should be up right now. Cheniere is up. Cheniere is at 235. The liquefied natural gas and overall energy market catching a bid from the EU deal. Next Decade should be up. Next Decade is up 4%. Is VG up? VG is also up 6%. Yeah, all of the energy plays in regards to natural gas are getting quite a bid from the EU commitment for $750 billion, which is not bad at all. BMNR, we just got a headline. Tom Lee will be making a series of investor videos for Bitmine. Quote, investors told us they would like to better understand Bitmine strategy, and we heard them loud and clear. We developed this ongoing monthly video series to continue updating and engaging with them. See, this is why Tom Lee is going to make Ethereum work. This is why Tom Lee is going to make Ethereum work. The press release just now is that they are officially releasing a monthly video series. He does this every week for Granny Shots, which is his ETF, which, by the way, just hit 2 billion AUM. I mean, just incredible. This was my point last week. My point last week about Tom Lee versus SBET is you need a Michael Saylor of Ethereum. Michael Saylor has done like 1,000 podcasts. Tom Lee understands the media. He understands how to communicate. People actually want to listen to him. You have someone like him preaching the Ethereum thesis every single month, most likely every single week, because he does a lot of podcasts as well. That's going to get more people to get excited about Ethereum. And that is very important for BitMine as well. Navitas, that's up 2.3%. Applied Digital, that's up a little bit, up about 1%. And AMD, now cracking through 171. Now cracking through 171. SMCI, that was up 3% last night. Where is SMCI today? SMCI, wow, still up 3%, 56.79. So SMCI catching a bid. Is Dell following? Dell might be following in the same niche. AMD, I'll check 172 resistance in a second. Dell is up about 1%, so a little bit less than SMCI. Let's check AMD resistance to 70 or 172 and see what we've got going on there. Yeah, these are all your energy plays right there on the screen. Those are getting some momentum as well. Grab is going to be on July 30th, guys. Do not trust the brokerages. Just go to the website. Go to the IR page for any company. Just type in company name IR. You will get the official earnings date on their website. So yeah, the brokerages, because it's an international company, the brokerages always get the date wrong. But it will be on Wednesday, 8 p.m. And that's when we'll have Grab. Okay, AMD looks like there's about 50,000 shares to crack 172. About 50,000 shares. So not crazy. But there is a shot they can crack. Where is SoFi? So SoFi is earnings tomorrow. SoFi, that's down. That is kind of weird that it's down today. Might be a little bit of a sell-off before earnings, which is okay. Wow, AMD 172. AMD, baby. 172. She is not slowing down. Again, for those that are wondering why it's really getting this momentum, there was an article that came out last night that said AMD's MI350 chip is going to increase by $25,000 a chip, and that it rivals Blackwell in terms of computing capacity. And the earnings estimates in that article, which has kind of proliferated throughout the masses, a lot of people are seeing what it said, went from $9 billion to $15 billion this year just on that chip. And as a result, I mean, you get $5 billion more in earnings. You're going to get the market to be pretty damn excited about it. AMD has not confirmed this yet. I think on the earnings next week, they will probably give a better update in terms of where they see demand going. But if Lisa Su says, yeah, we probably think we have another $5 billion worth of demand that we didn't guide for last quarter, market's going to love it. Market is absolutely going to love it. So there you go. Grab right there at 170, or not Grab. Maybe one day Grab at 172. AMD at 172. Grab is down on the day. Grab's at 530. That's down about 1%. Meta 722. Tesla goes green again. 317 pounds here. Let's see if we can touch 160 again. We touched it on Friday, dipped, got there in the pre-market, dipped again. Let's see if we can get back there. Robin at 105.82. S&P still flat. Didn't go red yet, but still flat. Apple's now green, and Google, which should be above 200 in my opinion. Google is green, but not as green as it should be. I do not own AMD, but I do own it in my stock draft, which is here on the screen. Matt's up 19%. Tanner's up 11. I'm up 9.5. AMD is now up 36% for me. So we got AMD at 126. Steve is up 3.2. And then Chris is up 1.72. So it's Matt, Tanner, Amit, Steve, Chris on our stock market draft right now. What is VAPE? Okay, is that a ticker symbol? VAPE? Why is this stock up 500%? Goodness gracious, bro. These people move on from Open Door to anything they can find. Okay, so Vape just got halted. $44 million market cap. What the heck is Vape? CEA Industries. They have 6 employees. They're in Colorado. They were founded in 2009. I'm going to try to find out what this company does. Growth-oriented company focused on they're a Canadian nicotine vape company. Okay, so they sell nicotine? Oh my goodness. They're wait, the reason they're up, dude, it's not just weed. They just established a treasury. $500 million private placement to establish the largest publicly listed BNB treasury. BNB is the Binance coin. Binance is one of the largest exchanges on the planet. They just raised 500 million from YZ Labs to buy up a ton of BNB. Dude, I mean, look, some of these companies are going to, if your company's in the gutter, which Vape, I don't think anyone knew about Vape. Now we're talking about it because they're establishing a crypto treasury. Yeah, that'll do it. That'll recapitalize your balance sheet. Now they have to hope that BNB continues to do well for that token to appreciate and for their treasury to gain momentum. But that's why that stock's up 500%. I mean, you're essentially adding 500 million to their enterprise value of BNB. And if BNB goes up, then that goes higher. That's pretty incredible. I mean, I cannot blame companies taking that strategy because, like, hey, it's a way to like get people excited about the stock. It's just a question of what asset are they picking and if that asset will appreciate over time. Does that feel a little bubbly? Yeah. But also you can't deny that, like, instead of putting that money into treasuries, the only reason they're raising that money is because investors are willing to allocate that capital into a company that has an underlying business, but that also wants to incorporate crypto as part of their balance sheet. And if that crypto is something that the market likes, whether it's BNB, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is, that can create another bid for those stocks, especially if those stocks really don't have a lot of momentum. Robinhood right here trying to get back to 106, Palantir 159, Tessie 316, AMD topped out at 172.73 so far. Let's see if it'll get back to break 173. Big Bear's down 2.5, Shopify's up 1.4, D-Wave basically flat on the day. SoundHound also flat on the day. Deckers is flat. Duolingo's down 1%. Upstart's flat. American Eagle, that one's also flat, even though a lot of people are talking about Sydney Sweeney. So the brand of American Eagle, I think, is getting a lot of earned media. Netflix right there, 11.93. That's up 1%. Then MicroStrategy, that's up 2%. They got upgraded to 680 today. But MicroStrategy is also up about 2%. Okay, let's see what else we have going on. CELC, that's up 200%. What the heck is this? Celcity? Okay, this is a $1 billion company. Isn't this a biotech? This might be moving. Yeah, this is a biotech. This is actually a biotech. Celcity, new breast cancer drug, quadruple survival time in phase 3 trials. Okay, so this is more legit. Looks like they had a successful breast cancer drug trial that increased survivability by, it looks like 9.3 months versus 2 months. And that's why that stock is up 200%. Okay, so that one seems a bit more legit. Figma is not IPOing today. Figma's IPOing, I believe, on Thursday. In terms of my thoughts on Figma, again, look, I think it's going to be one of the most oversubscribed IPOs in the market. They're growing 50%. They have $1 billion in cash. They're profitable. It's a relatively well-known company in Silicon Valley. They're pricing it at 16 billion. I think that's going to be closer to like 50 billion on IPO, if not at least 35 billion. I'm going to ask for 50 shares. I doubt I'm going to get them because Robinhood is, if I didn't get the shares of Arrow, which was some random drone company, I doubt I'm going to get Figma. So it's really a lottery system. But if it moves up in a day, I'm going to sell those shares because I don't really care about holding it as long-term investment. But I think it can do well. So that IPO will be very important on Thursday. Dell right here is at 132, and then AMD trying to get back to 173, 172.65 is where we at right now. When is the last chance to put in a request? I don't know, but I think soon. They might have closed it, but I haven't checked, but I think today. Usually they close it a couple days before. So I would do it soon. You're probably gonna have to bid at $33. The range is like 28 to 33, but if you really want shares, you're probably gonna have to bid closer to the high end. But I think it's like a $50 stock when it IPOs. The demand for that one, I'm surprised why they're doing 16 billion. You would think they would price it at a higher level, but maybe they're trying to make sure the IPO goes very well. And so that will be one to watch out for on Thursday. UNH right here, 283. Robinhood again, trying to get to 106. And then Pound here, 15 cents away from touching 160 again. Let's see if she can get back there. AMD very close to 173 as well. Where is NVIDIA? We are just below 175. Just below 175. If you sell within 60 days, you will never be able to get IPO shares on Hood again. That is not true. You will not be able to get it for 60 days. So if you sell an IPO, at least the way I read the terms and conditions, if you sell an IPO on day one within the same day, then for the next 2 months, you're banned from participating in new IPOs. For me, I don't really care because I don't think there's going to be any good IPOs in the next 2 months outside of Figma. So Figma is the best IPO that I think is coming up. And I'm not a big IPO guy. So I'm not If Robinhood bans me for 2 months, it's whatever. It's not that big of a deal. But it's not like Stripe's going public in 2 months or Klarna or Randall. So any of the other IPOs, I think, are not going to be as big as Figma. So it feels like that one has the best room to run. Yeah, for some people it's 30 days. For me, it's 60 days. I mean, they might do some cohort specific restrictions as well. But the notice I got was for 60 days. Mr. Never Not Working, thank you for the $28 super chat. Hey, Amit, wouldn't credit card overuse and BNPL prop up the consumer spending numbers? Yes, you are correct on that. We looked at a chart yesterday about BNPL numbers being much higher than expected, along with credit card rates going up as well. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of people that are taking on debt, VG, by the way, up 7%, to be able to finance their life. And it's kind of a tale of two consumers, right? If you're a consumer that has had assets over the past couple of years, whether it's stocks, crypto, real estate, you've done very well. If you're a consumer that has no assets, you really haven't done that well. The question, I think, for all of us is, do the consumers that really don't participate in the investor portion of the economy, are they at such a horrific level in terms of paycheck to paycheck, taking out loans to finance their life, et cetera, something that could demolish the entire underlying structure of the economy, right? Are things that bad for those consumers? NVIDIA back over 175. I don't know the answer to that question, but I think the answer to that question, which we'll find out hopefully in earnings as well, is a better indication of if this economy is propped up by a little bit too much of leverage, I guess you could say. But if it's consumers that are able to pay off their credit bills, even if they have to miss a couple payments here and there, and use buy now, pay later in a strategic way versus in a, hey, like you buy now and then you never pay, then I think the consumers that have assets can subsidize a lot of the other consumers in this economy. And I think that's what's been happening over the past couple of years. But obviously, with the influx of tariffs and tax cuts over the next 6 months, we're going to get a lot of different types of data that determines how this economy is going. Palantir very close to 160, and then Tesla trying to get back to 320. Lighter, they had a partnership with NVIDIA last week. That's up another 39%. Again, very small cap company. They were up 200% last week. This is, if I'm not wrong, a autonomous driving startup that is working with NVIDIA. I think the main reason it's running is because they're working with NVIDIA. But that one is up 40%. Trump on Fed Chair Powell. He's leaving soon. I'll miss him. Okay, he's definitely not going to miss him. But I still can't believe last week they were both wearing the construction hats inside of the Fed building. Like, that was crazy, bro. That was legit simulations. It was legit a simulation we were living through. But it was happening. If you can't put 6% towards your 401k, you're misspending, even if it's minimum wage. I'm happy you brought up 401k, because take a look at this chart right here. 401ks in the United States are now becoming emergency piggy banks as Americans tap funds. So this is the percentage of workers in 401k plans that took a hardship distribution, aka they pulled some money out of their 401k. As you can see, that percentage is going higher, less than 5%. But back in 2020, it was less than 2%. And so again, there are signs that there's a healthy number of consumers in this economy that, whether it comes to missed auto payments, buy now, pay later, or tapping their funds from saving accounts, theoretically, which a lot of people treat their 401k plan as, people need more money just to be able to finance their day-to-day lives. And again, if you've had assets, it's just a different reality. It's just that, like, you need, let's say you have 5,000 shares of Robinhood and you need $100,000 for some emergency, whatever, right? You can sell 1,000 shares right now and get $105,000. And maybe you bought those shares at $40 or $30. I mean, like, that's a big asset to have right when you need it, right? Or you can borrow again if you really need an emergency money and you get a margin loan against your assets because you're going to be able to pay it back. You just need the money at this moment. People that don't have any assets, they can't just go to the bank and say, give me the money. The bank's going to start doing a background check, see what money, what rate, and then they're going to give you a pretty high interest rate. Whereas if you have assets tomorrow, you can get a loan against your assets today in 2 seconds, quite frankly. And that is the difference between people who have assets and don't. And it's a different reality for those that are living it with those assets that have appreciated, and for those that, have had no assets appreciate. Google right here goes red. Speaking of assets that can't appreciate, why the hell can't this damn stock go up, dude? What is going on with Google? 41% of you said Meta outperforms on earnings. 41% of you said Meta. Did AMD get 173? Wow. 173.43, busting through 173. Absolutely incredible. AMD is the story of the day. 173.50. 173.50. That article that came out last night, I'm trying to find what source put it out because I think that is the reason. I'm trying to see if it was an equity report or if it was just like someone who studies the semiconductor industry. But it made a big deal. I think it was Reuters, but they were citing industry sources. This is the article I'm talking about. It cited the M1350 increasing their price by about $10,000 and being comparable to Blackwell's B200. And that right there, I believe, is the reason AMD is moving 4% today. Because the earnings estimates just went up by about $5 billion if that price increase is correct. And the only reason they could increase that price is because it's comparable to Blackwell, which again is not bearish NVIDIA. It just means, hey, there's a lot of demand and that demand can be taken by another company, if not NVIDIA. NVIDIA, by the way, above 175 as well. So NVIDIA getting some green. I do not own Nebius. I own it in the portfolio though. I think we got it it's at $50.99. I think I picked it up at $51.20. Okay, so I'm up like 1% on that, 1.4 in the stock draft. But I do not personally own that. CoreWeave, is that green today? CoreWeave is red, basically flat. Basically flat. Tesla up 1.5. Again, Tesla, the Samsung deal, we talked about it in the morning, but that Samsung deal, $16.5 billion, very bullish for Samsung. And although that's more CapEx for Tesla, to me, that's investors saying, holy crap, Tesla is ready to really begin scaling their operations in regards to Optimus. That is going to need a lot of chips. Elon said verbatim today that Optimus is going to need a lot of those chips. And then obviously their models to make FSD even stronger. 321.50 right here on Tesla. That's up 1.72%. The earnings don't justify the valuation, but the sheer potential and momentum that Tesla can grow into with robotaxis and FSD and then Optimus. I mean, I think it's why this stock max pain is around 275, and I think the upper limit is around 350, but I think this is the range. I think this is the range that Tesla stays at over the coming at least year until earnings begin to inflect. 322 right here on Tesla. That is green, up about 2%. Pinterest, is that green today? Pins, we haven't looked at this in a while. Pinterest is slightly up, 38.19. I think they have earnings in about 2 weeks. Grab right here down about 1.4%. That's at 529. SMCI 56.89. Next Decade up a little bit. And then Cheniere losing a little bit of its pump, but that's still green. Ethereum at 38.40. Yes, Cheesecake earnings is this week as well. That is as well. Tron filed a Form S-3 shelf registration with the SEC, enabling it to issue up to $1 billion in mixed securities, including common stock. Okay, so that's a little bit of dilution. Tron, that's up 17%. Market doesn't care. They might be using that billion to potentially buy some crypto. That could help as well. Did you hear about the alien ship approaching Earth in November? I did not. I hope that, I honestly, bro, if the aliens come in November, they're going to need chips, right? Like there's no way their fancy smanchy spaceships don't need GPUs. And so I would imagine that should be a bull case for NVIDIA if they do visit us, because like they're going to need chips. There's no way they don't. What else do we have? Wait until rates drop. Tesla's going to run. Yeah. So Tesla, I think Tesla's going to be beneficiary of rate cuts, but remember, like the Tesla earnings, Elon said word for word, until Q3 2026, they're not going to have any momentum. I mean, he quite literally said, I don't want to say they're going to be bad, but I'm just saying they might not be the best. So I think rate cuts will be a tailwind. The biggest tailwind for Q3 is that this EV tax credit is going away. So a lot of people are getting ready to buy. But, you know, after the tax credit is gone, will that demand sustain itself? And I think that's going to be the biggest question for Tesla going into 2026. NVIDIA is at 175. AMD wants 174, folks. AMD wants 174, 173.78 on AMD. Yeah, we can make a trade deal if the aliens show up. They've got to be easier to negotiate with than the Chinese, right? Like, they've got to be easier to negotiate with than the Chinese. Do you guys think aliens will actually visit us in our lifetime, like in the next 100 years? Like, I think all of us can agree aliens are out there. Like, some type of intelligent life is out there. But has that intelligent life developed the technology that is necessary for them to travel from their galaxy to our galaxy? You know, the crazy thing that I understood, that like shocked me or surprised me when I learned about like the world. I thought like the Milky Way galaxy has all the planets. The Milky Way galaxy is one of trillions of other galaxies. Like, our planet is one of a small string of planets, or is one of the smaller planets that is in a string of hundreds of thousands of planets inside of a galaxy. But then there's trillions of other galaxies. Like, it is actually insane how small we are in the grand scheme of things. But, you know, we tend to think we're the most intelligent life form across the entire universe, and maybe we are, but the idea that there's not other intelligent life feels like, I don't know, it just feels like weird to assume there's not anything else that's out there. Nike, by the way, up 2%. It was up 5. Now it's up 2. And then Hoodie trying to chill at 105 pounds here. Cannot get to 160 again. It's a little bit of resistance right there. 159.58. Trying to get back there, but not there yet. Bro said our lifetime, then gave a 100-year time frame. How long are you living? I mean, I'm just assuming over the next 100 years, right? I don't know if I'll live to be 128, but I don't know, around that 100-year time frame. My sleep score, by the way, after I got a Fitbit, it's not the best, bro. It's at like 75. So I need to get that. Tanner's is at like 94. I need to work on my sleep score. But I got 5 hours and 55 minutes last night. I think that's pretty decent, bro. 5 hours and 55 minutes is not crazy. Probably needs to get that to 7 hours, but I feel like 5 hours is relatively decent. Apple 213, Google 192, Intel 20.9, AMD, she's 20 cents away. She's 20 cents away from 174. We have only been intelligent for a few decades. That's not enough time for us to be interesting to another species. That's fair. I mean, some of these species might have been intelligent for thousands of years at this point. Mine is 72. 5 hours is terrible. When I fell asleep at 11:28 last night and I woke up at 4. Oh, it's not 5 hours and 55 minutes. It was 5 hours and 5 minutes. I woke up at 4:52 today. 11:28 to 4:52. I got the Series 6. It was on sale on Amazon after Prime Week. I think it was like $120 or something, but I got the Series 6 Fitbit. Joby's down. Okay, so Joby had a big week last week, or a big 2 weeks. That one giving up 2% is not too bad. That one is slightly down. I have a bunch of Trump quotes. So on China, he said, we're going to be setting a tariff for the rest of the world, and that's just what they have to pay. He said he touted Russian rare earths as potential trade product. On Russia, he says, I'm not so interested in talking to Putin anymore. And on Fed Chair Powell, he said a smart person would cut. Trump also reiterated he doesn't like wind energy. He doesn't like wind energy. He said this many times, but I guess he's confirming to let us know that he doesn't like wind energy. Is he still live? Let me see. Let me see if he's still live and if he's talking. Oh, he's still live. All right, let's head over to him, see what he's saying. And then we'll keep going.
Focus on trade deals. I want to focus on the deal we just made with the European Union, which is the biggest trade deal in history. It's the biggest deal, I think, in history, not just trade deal. So if they would have had something, they would have used it.
People keep writing stories about the time you flew him out of Mar-a-Lago. Can you settle that? What was it about? What caused the breach?
That's such old history. Very easy to explain, but I don't want to waste your time by explaining it. But for years, I wouldn't talk to Jeffrey Epstein. I wouldn't talk because he did something that was inappropriate. He hired help. And I said, don't ever do that again. He stole people that worked for me. I said, don't ever do that again. He did it again. And I threw him out of the place, persona non grata. I threw him out, and that was it. I'm glad I did, if you want to know the truth. And by the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times. I never went to the island, but Larry Summers, I hear, went there. He was the head of Harvard. And many other people that are very big people. Nobody ever talks about them. I never had the privilege of going to his island. And I did turn it down, but a lot of people in Palm Beach were invited to his island. In one of my very good moments, I turned it down. I didn't want to go to his island. Yeah.
On Gaza, next time you speak to Netanyahu, what will you ask him to do?
Say it one louder.
Next time you speak to Netanyahu, what will you ask him to do?
Well, I'm going to say, look, we're giving money and we're giving food, but we're over here and we're over in the United States. And I think I can speak for the prime minister. We're giving money and things. He's got to sort of like run it. Well, I want them to make sure they get the food. I want to make sure they get the food, every ounce of food. I think you want the same thing.
It's an absolute focus.
Because that food isn't being delivered,
Mr. President,
or at least all of it.
you said you were going to set essentially a tariff for the rest of the world.
For the world.
What percent will that tariff be?
I would say it'll be somewhere in the 15 to 20% range.
So maybe 15 or 20 or?
No, I said, I sort of know.
AMD 174, folks. AMD 174.30. She is up 5% on the day. Congratulations to everyone in AMD.
But I just want to be nice. I would say in the range of 15 to 20%. Probably one of those two numbers.
UK and steel aluminum makers here are worried about tariffs. Will you do anything to help them here?
Aluminum? You're a pretty big aluminum maker.
Yeah, that's already covered in the deal that we've agreed. So we're just doing the implementation of that.
But Mr. President, when will that come down from 25% to 0?
You mean on the overall, on the world?
On steel and aluminum from Britain, it's 25.
Well, we're going to know pretty soon. We're going to have it pretty soon.
Mr. President,
You have no idea that these people are tough negotiators, okay? But we're a big buyer of steel, but we're going to make our own steel, and we're going to make our own aluminum for the most part. But we buy a lot of aluminum from right here, and a lot of steel, too.
Yeah.
Who are you with? Who are you with? Because you're asking such nice questions.
TV News, that's TV News.
Very good. Good. They're lucky.
We have a lot of unhappy farmers in this country at the moment, and I'm sure the Prime Minister will thank you for raising this. We've had changes to inheritance tax, which mean a lot of farmers feel they're going to lose their farms when they die or their father dies. How important are farmers to a country?
You mean they're going to lose the farm because of estate taxes, okay? So what I've done,
Pay so much, they're cash poor, but they have great.
I know, well, they're cash poor. They're land rich and cash poor. A lot of people are, I've had that too. Sometimes I'm land rich and cash, sometimes I'm cash rich and land poor. I like it both ways, but as they get older, I like the more conservative route. So I did something that I don't know if you can do, but it was great. I love our farmers. As you know, in our tax bill, we have a clause that's very important. We were losing a lot of farms to the banks because a loving mother and father would die and left their farm to their children or their child, but their children, their family. And they loved their family and they thought they were doing them a favor, but they had a 50% tax to pay. So the land would get valued and at a high number because some of the farms were valuable, but they didn't, they couldn't quantify it. And they'd go out and borrow money to pay the estate tax or the death tax, as it's called. And they'd overextend and they'd lose the farm. And they'd commit suicide in many cases.
No. Our levels are nowhere near 50%. They're not. We've just introduced where it's paid over many years. Works out.
Well, that's good.
An extra 2% a year over 10 years. So it's not at those levels by any stretch of the imagination. But the other thing that we've done, as you know, is make sure that we've got a pathway for farmers that actually increases their year-on-year income, which is the most important thing. And in all of the deals that we do, we ensure that our farmers are the central focus for much of it, particularly on the agriculture, including in the US deal, because I don't think we can go on for years saying that it's acceptable for farmers to have a year-on-year income which isn't sufficient. We've got to fix that problem. We can't simply live with that problem. So it's a very different situation.
Well, we ended the estate tax. There is no estate tax on farmers. So when a parent leaves their farm, because again, a lot of these farms, they don't make a lot of money, but it's a way of life and they love their way of life and they love that dirt. That dirt is the most beautiful thing they've ever seen. They love it. I mean, they're farmers. They love doing it. They don't know how to do anything else, but they don't want to do anything else. I speak to farmers. I say, would you like to live in my penthouse in Manhattan? It's always beautiful. No, sir, I want this farm. And what happens is, we were losing a lot of people to suicide. They'd borrow money to pay the estate tax, and they were not able to pay it. And some banks are ruthless. They wouldn't do anything, and they would end up committing suicide. We have totally ended the estate tax in those situations. So there's no estate tax. So when a parent leaves the farm to the kids, they don't have to worry about their local, possibly unfriendly banker coming in and stealing their farm.
Migration, one of the hot flagship issues in Britain is migrants being housed in hotels and people in the local communities not feeling safe. Is that an appropriate place to have migrants?
I don't like anything about it. They shouldn't be allowed in. Anybody illegally should not be allowed in the country. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
All right. So that's what you got from Trump. Market's relatively flat, nothing too crazy. And AMD really having a day, 174.17. NVIDIA as well. AMD and NVIDIA, obviously different market caps, but stock prices almost the same. 174.10 on AMD, 174.83 on NVIDIA. SoFi is down 0.5%. Pinterest is up a little bit. Palantir going red, not getting that 160 level, 158.80. And you got the S&P 500 right here, 637.90. That's starting to go green, but it was flat. SMCI, is that one moving? SMCI. Wow, SMCI, that's a big one. That is a big one. All right, so that's up 6%. Does SMCI do any of the server work for AMD? I actually don't know that. AMD has to have some of these companies work with them, right? Whether it's SMCI, Dell, etc. I know that SMCI very intimately works with NVIDIA. But yes, okay, so it might be moving off AMD. It might be moving off AMD if that's the reason. Because I didn't think there's any specific SMCI news today. So that's getting some momentum. Amit, what's your input on SoFi earnings tomorrow? I talked about it last night. I think Noto is going to crush. Rate cuts around the corner, and that's what the market cares about when it comes to SoFi. Now, the tech platform, I don't think is going to grow massively because Noto told us don't expect it to grow till Q1 2026. So then the question becomes, will SoFi have a typical amazing quarter and then the street just dumps it? Or will this be the quarter where it breaks out, right? You always have that quarter where it breaks out. The nuance to SoFi is that everything from a macro perspective that needed to be like going in the right direction is happening. The EU deal, the China stuff, general market sentiment. The past 3 quarters, SoFi is at earnings, and a day before or like literally an hour before, there would be some stupid piece of macro news that would just take the whole market down. And then SoFi would have to report earnings, and then it would just have to deal with the general market sentiment being bad. This time is different. So I do think if Noto crushes and communicates well, then, could this see 25 and then kind of never look back in the low 20s? Yeah. But then again, it's a question of like, does the market really want to give SoFi the premium? Already, SoFi is trading at a higher book value than, or a similar book value to JP Morgan. They're the only 2 banks that are trading at very aggressive book multiples. Now, the reason for that for JP Morgan is because it's JP freaking Morgan. For SoFi, it's growing very fast. But the technology component towards SoFi is what's supposed to create the operating leverage, which should bring a lot more momentum to the stock price because there should be more net income. Right now, they're only going to do about 6 cents a share. If they put up 7-8 cents a share, I think that could be a big beat. That could help the stock re-rate, or if they guide for that. But it's really going to be up to Noto on Tuesday to show us what we got. What I will say, though, is I don't see SoFi going below 20. I think there's a world in which that could happen. Obviously, anything could happen, but it's held 20 for almost a month now. I really do think this is time for it to kind of hold that as a base and move forward. And this earnings will kind of give a good indication if that could happen. In terms of Grab, I think that could do well, but again, I don't know, right? I think Q3 is when they really raise EBITDA guidance. Q2, they might not raise it, and I'm only saying that because last year they left Q2 the same, and then Q3 they raised it. If they do that this time, then I think it's relatively flat. I do think the risk of it going below 5 is significantly lowered. There's just too much cash on the balance sheet, and if it does go below 5, I would be a heavy buyer. But I think they're going to crush earnings. Not sure how the market's going to react to them crushing earnings. S&P 500 right here, 637. Where's Marvell? That one is also green by 3%, along with AMD and SMCI. So those are getting a bid. And then Rocket Lab is down 5%. Why is Rocket Lab taking a 5% hit outside of the fact that it went up like 40% over the past 2 weeks? I don't see any specific reason. We did get a new price target to 51 by Craig Hallam. They initiated coverage on Rocket Lab, $51. That's rather bullish. Not sure why it's getting a 5% hit. Tesla right there, 323. All right, so Tesla breaking out a little bit. Nice little green candle up 2.2 as Rocket Lab's down. Is Google actually continuing to go down? Wow. They're really taking Google down, dude. I don't know what Sundar has to do to catch a bid. This is either going to be the most obvious thing ever a year from now, even at 192, or this is going to be a value trap like a PayPal. And I would bet more on it being obvious than anything like a PayPal, but that one is just not outperforming the broader market. Yeah, I mean, look, Rocket Lab had a big move, obviously, had a massive move. So we looked at Rocket Lab's valuation the other day. It's expensive. I mean, there are some stocks that are obviously very expensive, which you cannot be concerned about if they fall even 15% from here. Because it's like, look, they got up there, and eventually at some point people might take profits. The thing about earnings on Rocket Lab is that they're still 3 quarters away from profitability. I don't know what they need to put up on earnings to maintain this level or to expand the multiple outside of Neutron happening by the end of this year, which for all intended purposes feels like it's not going to happen. I mean, Peter Beck said it might happen, but you can't rely on that. So I don't know. I mean, they have good revenue growth, but they are obviously not profitable yet. And a surprise profitability would definitely do it, but that might just take some time. So I think Rocket Lab even holding these levels going into earnings would not be bad at all. Once the DOJ closes case, Google will shoot up. I think that's possible. I also think once we get a remedy to this Apple partnership with Google being the default browser on Apple, that will help give some clarity. And if they take it away, I think it's bearish, but it's like short-term bearish. I don't think that means Google search is dead. And obviously Google search is not dead. It's growing 12% year over year. So any bear case people have, there's a lot of different arguments to bolster that bear case, but the numbers are not necessarily showing that yet. At least not the numbers that we saw on their earnings. I know Google looks like a winner and it could be a big gainer like Microsoft one day. Right now, I would not touch Google on the field that it will grow big. I mean, you're not alone. There's a lot of people that simply feel 10 blue links is dead and that the future is an AI future that Google is not going to really take part in, which maybe you guys are right. I mean, the bears, have had that argument for a while. I'm just saying in the numbers, trying to be objective, the numbers are not showing that, at least not yet. Maybe they will, but not yet today. Okay, Vlad is speaking today on his new startup, right? I might be able to stream that. So he has a new startup called Harmonic. Yeah, today. It's going to be live on X. Yeah, maybe we'll go live and we'll watch this. He raised I think 150 million for this company. It is called Super Intelligence of the Mathematical Mind. That's the name of the event. And basically, Vlad has teased that they are coming out with their own model called Aristotle, which is a mathematical large language model. I think that's going to be really interesting because I don't know what the heck Vlad's planning to do with this. But if there's any incorporation between that and Robinhood, I mean, guy's built a $100 billion company. He obviously has some plan for this new startup they're working on. So definitely think that'll be interesting to look at. So maybe at 3 p.m. we'll go live and we'll see what Vlad has to say. Tesla right here at 324. 324. That's up 2.5%. Amit, even if 10 blue links isn't taking part of the future, believing that Google won't be a part of the future is foolish. They are acting like Sundar is Tim Cook. They are not the same. Yeah, I agree. There you go, Tesla above 324. Look, Sundar has shown he can put up the numbers and he can innovate. And he's at least trying with all these different bets that they're doing. So 10 blue links eventually will disappear. I think it's probably going to take a good 10 years, because most of the world still doesn't know what AI is. But we will eventually see the deterioration of 10 blue links. That doesn't mean we're going to see the deterioration of search as a business. It'll just become an AI native business. And so far, the numbers are not showing us that search is dying. So I don't know what the market is hung up about outside of the DOJ stuff. But if that's resolved, then I think Google's fine. Not to mention cloud, bro. Cloud is doing, I mean, like, it's not easy to grow cloud at 34% with the operating margins that they have. And they're doing it. So I think Google is going to be fine. It's just a narrative thing right now. Also, I mean, if Waymo really starts to gain momentum as well, right? Like, there's just a lot of different things that Google can do to not be suckered into just like the dead search company that is showing the search isn't even dying yet. Celsius, is that green? We haven't looked at Celsius in a minute. Celsius is still up like 80% or 50% year to date. Celsius is up 70% year to date, 70.74. So even though that one's chilling, that one's had a nice little run year to date as well. Oh, WeRide. So there's actually a headline on WeRide. So this is a company that is working on autonomy, and they just became the first company to secure a robo-taxi license in Saudi Arabia. It is the sixth country after the US, China, UAE, Singapore, and France. A pilot program is already live in Riyadh in partnership with Uber. The permit allows nationwide operations, not just test zones. WeRide is also rolling out Robobus and RoboSweeper services in the kingdom, aiming for a broader autonomous mobility push in the region. We know that the Prince of Saudi Arabia really wants Tesla to come to the region and contribute. So, yeah, Saudi is not shying on the fact that they want a robotaxi autonomous future and that they're willing to spend. Wow, Tesla's really making a little bit of a move right here. Maybe 325. Maybe 325 is on the charts, but that is green, 324. And then Palantir as well, trying to go green again. 159.29 here. Yes, NVIDIA did invest in their stock. Is their stock up on that? It's flat. $3 billion company, flat on the day. But that news is rather bullish. Tesla right here. There you go, 325. See, this is the thing about Tesla, bro. This is the thing about Tesla. Horrible earnings, falls to 300. That is your dip. That is your dip because there are too many things that the market cares about that are bullish long-term. AI and Tesla is part of that future. It's just that simple. It's what I've concluded over the past couple of months. And that's why I bought. And even if I bought at 335, like I think this is the accumulation phase. I bought 10 shares at 302, and hopefully over the next year, I'll have some more money to keep buying in this range. But I don't think I'm going to get lucky enough to get it back in like the low 200s. I don't think that's happening. I also don't think it deserves to be anywhere near the 400s, which is why I think it'll naturally correct. So I think this is the phase. This is the accumulation phase if you want to build a real Tesla position. And given the volatility, selling the calls allows you to offset your cost basis. But anyone saying it's going to 200, I don't believe it. And they can have all the numbers in the world on their side for why Tesla deserves to be 200 or 150. It's not going there. In my opinion, it is not going there. There is too much propping up the broader belief in Elon pulling this off. And you're going to have days like this where they announce a Samsung deal and then boom, stock's up 3%. Maybe tomorrow the stock goes back down to 315, but like it doesn't mean it has to go back into the low 200s. It's just hard to see that playing out. My covered call was 370 for August 29th. My covered call, I sold it before earnings, so it's up like 40, 50%. And 370 is pretty conservative, dude. I could have been like more aggressive, but even then I'm still like giving myself some breathing room. But 370 is the one I sold. Nike's up 3%. That is one is still green. SoFi's still red right here. And then Google, yeah, it is kind of crazy, right? Google's red while Tesla's green. Goodness, Google down 1%. Tesla's up 3%, almost 326, and Google's down 1%. Wild, bro. Wild. I do not have Google spreads. I have calls that if Google doesn't get to 210 by January, I will be losing some money on. So mine are 150 calls January 2026. I'm down 22% on those calls right now because I bought them when Google was at the lovely price of 190 back in January. And so that theta decay is coming at me. But yeah, 210 is what I'm looking for to break even on the calls. And so, I think we get there by the end of the year. I think we'll be there, but We're going to have to see. This DOJ thing is going to have to be over for Google. Pound to right here, 158.80. That's flat. Tessie 325. Grab 532. AMD down from 174, but still holding 172, up 4%. And then Hoodie 105.49. 105.49. Duolingo's down 5%. What is going on, dude? How did I pick the worst stock ever? I'm less than 2% away from beating Tanner. And this stupid language learning owl is preventing me from really like competing with Matt when it comes to this ETF challenge. Like, this is just, I cannot believe this was such a bad pick. Like, unbelievably bad pick. And I think it could recover over time. But goodness, this was a horrible pick. Like, I don't know what I was thinking picking this damn thing. It's the only thing that's new. I could have picked Nike, bro. I made fun of Nike. I could have picked Nike. I would have been at like almost 14% on the ETF. I'm at 9% right now. I could have had Nike at 60 freaking 2. And I picked Duolingo. But their earnings are good. Their earnings are not. That's why I'm confused. Why is it down 5%? Their earnings are phenomenal. I don't get why it's down. The only reason I can conclude is my rant. For those that are new here, the day after I picked Duolingo, I went on a rant about why language learning is stupid compared to learning finance. Not that language learning is irrelevant, but that compared to financial literacy, I think most people would pick financial literacy. And for some reason, the stock starts to fall 5% every week. And I'm like, did they play my rant in Citadel or something? Is Ken Griffin freaking just telling his employees to sell out? Like, what is going on? What is going on? 326 on Tessie. She touched it. 326.40. 326.40. They had a bunch of bad press for TikTok for using AI people. Okay, I didn't even hear about that. But their TikTok is one of the largest brand accounts on the planet. So I doubt that bad press took the stock down like 35%. I feel like I just picked it at a very high valuation and the market woke up and was like, why is Duolingo trading at 470? But to my defense, Duolingo was at 540. I picked it at 470. I was like, okay, it already took a bit of a hit. Like, now it's at 340. I'm like, goodness, bro. Goodness. There is no actual news on Google other than more upgrades it's getting. I don't know why it's down, but it's been getting plenty of upgrades. Microsoft right here goes red as well, 513. Okay, so I think it's fair to say the EU pump that we experienced last night is fading. S&P is up by 0.1%. So it was at 640 last night. I think the EU pump is fading. The market's saying, hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just chillax a little bit. We're heading to the end of July. This is the biggest week for earnings. I think that's actually kind of healthy. I would be a little bit more worried if, the S&P was pushing 643, 644 today. So I think the market's like, hey, we want to see earnings, especially on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we'll decide if we can go higher. But that EU pump is relatively faded today. Just normal DOJ stuff for Google. Let me see. Maybe there is a DOJ headline as well. But this is starting to become a bit annoying on Google. It's going to take patience on this one. It's going to take patience. Yeah, no DOJ headline today. The headline on Thursday was DOJ is looking for buyers of Chrome as they rule to break up Google after deeming it a monopoly. Again, there's a lot of nuance to what that looks like and if they're actually going to break them up and what Google can negotiate. So there is going to be some time until we get a full confirmation on this. But it seems like that's the overhang here. Good news is not pumping the market anymore. This means a local top, in my opinion. Hopefully we get a healthy 5 to 10% correction. I am not taking out the possibility of a 5 to 10% correction. I just think there is way too much money that wants to bid on this market. And 10% feels tough, dude. 10% would put the S&P at 573. I don't see S&P 5,700. I don't see it, dude. I really don't see that. I feel like that'd be tough. I feel like that would be tough. Now, could it happen? Sure. But that would be basically at May 23rd levels. 5% I could see, but I think it would be kind of more like 2 to 3%. Because I think, again, Morgan Stanley, Oppenheimer, all these guys are saying buy. Every time it falls, buy. Because you just don't know if you're going to get another opportunity. And you missed the big one in April, which just makes it harder for me to imagine that that opportunity is not treated like with some respect if we really do get a bad hit on earnings. Or just, in August in general. Okay, here's a good question for everybody. Let's say you wanted to de-risk going into August. What would you do? What would you do? Let's say you had to de-risk going into August. Specifically, what would you do? I'll give you my example. I would sell 1,000 shares of Hood. If I had to de-risk, I would sell 1,000 shares of Hood. If I had to de-risk and raise some cash and chill out, I have a lot of Hood, so I don't feel crazy from again, this is not do I want to sell, do I want to take profits? This is more so, hey, I'm scared, I want to de-risk, here's what I'm going to do. That would be my route. I think that would be the easiest way for me to at least de-risk. Obviously, selling covered calls, all that stuff. But I'm like, if you had to really take some profits and get some cash, right? Not just some premium income, what would you do? I think that would be my route. So that would be how I go. But I'm curious to see what other people would do. Costas says sell everything. Okay, usually that's not the best strategy unless we get a black swan. Sell a little fart coin. That might not be horrible. Sell 15,000 shares of AMZU. Is that 2x leveraged Amazon? That's 5x leverage. There's a 5x Amazon leveraged ETF. Goodness gracious, bro. Yeah, I mean, Amazon goes up 2%, you go up 10% on AMZ. Goodness gracious. Is it 2x? Weeble's saying 5x. Okay, well, if it's 2x, then that's more reasonable. Goodness, I've never seen a 5. I've seen 3x. I've never seen 5x. Let me see on Robinhood. Weeble's saying 5x. Why is that's aggressive, bro? 5x leverages. Might as well just get a perpetual futures contract at that point. Like, this is just, that's aggressive. AMZU. Okay, Legend says 2x. All right, so it's probably 2x. I don't know why Weeble is saying 5x, but that's 2x. Okay, A says cut my BM&R position. Some other people, let's see what you guys say. Jonathan says, I might consider selling in the money calls. That's not horrible. So in the money calls means, like, for example, on Amazon, if you own 100 shares of Amazon and you bought it at 170 and the stock's at 230, 233, you might sell a covered call at 225 or like 230, or even right here at this price, right? 233. And the goal is to let it get called away and you're okay with Amazon going higher because you want to take some profits and you get a little bit of premium to be able to take some profits. You can't make anything larger than 2x anymore. The 3x are grandfathered in. Really? I did not know that. Interesting. Yeah, because you have, TQQQ, for example. So you do have some of those that seem to be grandfathered in. Sell AMD and buy back later when it has a random crash for no reason. Okay, that's also fair. No stress says just buy a few puts and chill. Keep your positions. If the market goes down, it's only going to down 5 to 10% max. I think that's fair, dude. Again, I'm not going to be doing any massive hedge going into earnings outside of covered calls or going into August. But if I really had to pick, I think I would just sell some shares and raise some cash and kind of chill out. I feel like the philosophy here is that if you are heavily in a position that is responsible for a decent chunk of your gains, the question is, if you take some off the table on that position, do you still feel okay with the position? And so if you've got, 20,000 shares of AMD or 200 shares of AMD, and you feel like taking off 25% of that position is reasonable, or 10% of that position, then, but you still feel comfortable with the AMD position that you have, given AMD's run up as much, it's not a horrible idea. Now, granted, if you're doing it literally just because you think there's going to be a move down, I think you have to also question the logic, because, like, what if the move down is 3-4%? You feel a little good in the moment, and then, the market rallies again September, October. Like, do you really want to have the burden of allocating that capital somewhere else, especially if you got an AMD at like $80 or a Robinhood at like $40? So there's a lot of considerations that have to go into hedging, especially if you think the sell-off is not going to last as long as it might last, as long as it has lasted in the past, which in April, was a couple weeks. Yeah, you're essentially trying to time the market, and you're probably going to fail at it, but it's for the peace of mind, which is, why most people even engage in the hedge in the first place. Firefly is going public today. Firefly Space's IPO will value the company at about 5.5 billion, raised at almost 631 million. What's their ticker symbol? Firefly. This is an aerospace company. Are they going public today? 5.5 billion, $35 to $39 a share. They're going to raise 630 million. Okay, they're not going public today, but they just filed to go public. Firefly Aerospace. I've never heard of this company. Firefly Aerospace. Yeah, they filed to go public today, but they're not going public today. They work with a lot of the primes: Lockheed Martin, Northrop, Raytheon, L3 Harris, the U.S. Space Force. Huh. Okay, I'm going to go through their S1, and I'm going to see what their revenues look like. Maybe there's something interesting there. Duolingo still down 5%. Nike's up 3%. S&P still flat. S&P has not gone red today. It stayed flat. And then Tesla just below 325. As a rockety guy, I wouldn't touch Firefly. I have more successful launches than they do. Maybe that's why Rocket Lab is going down a bit. Yeah, I got to look at this company. I've never heard of this company before. Space as a thematic is getting momentum. So it makes sense that they're taking this opportunity to go public. Amid, have you tried agent mode on ChatGPT? I have not, because honestly, I don't use ChatGPT anymore. I use a lot more Grok. So I have not tried agent mode on that yet. But I am looking to get deeper into some of these agentic workflows. This is a video I saw today of someone using Robinhood with Perplexity's Comet browser. And they're basically prompting the assistant inside of the browser to do a bunch of stock market research. And it's actually really cool, dude. Like, it's because like every time you get into Robinhood, then this agent just pops up and it starts like giving you details and overviews and giving you different strategies for investing. I imagine Robinhood will eventually have something like this, but Perplexity is definitely showing their browser as a worthwhile alternative to at least take a look at. I've seen a lot of other cooler videos of the agent doing some pretty autonomous tasks. I imagine Google is going to come out with something like this pretty soon, and debut an agent-based browser. The question is just how is it going to be incorporated inside of Chrome itself. The only reason I use Grok over ChatGPT is because I pay for Grok. I pay $50 a month for Twitter Premium, so it's just like the go-to thing that I use. I still like ChatGPT though; it's good, and Grok has they're all ChatGPT is really good at like summarizing information in a different way. Grok is really good at giving me answers because it scans through X and it has a lot of real-time data. So I use them for the one thing I don't use at all is Gemini, but I use a lot of Google overviews. So even though I don't use Gemini, I still use a ton of Google. But Grok is like kind of like my my daily go-to. Okay, let's see what other headlines we have. Chile finance minister expects copper tariff exception. Chile won't retaliate against U.S. tariffs, finance minister says. What tariffs are we putting on Chile? U.S. tariffs on Chile. 10%? Okay, so it looks like the Chile prime minister is okay with 10%. Okay, that's fine. And then Carney, we were watching him. Or no, we weren't watching. We were watching the other guy. Carney reiterates that a U.S. trade deal without any tariffs is not likely. So we still don't have a deal with Canada. Canada, Mexico, Australia, South Korea, and India. Those are the next big 5 that we got to get done. And we're in Stockholm with China today. So hopefully we make progress on that. But nothing so far with Canada. Dude, I'm saying Chile correctly. There's no way I'm saying it wrong because it's not Chile. It's not Chile. So there's no way that I'm saying it wrong. There's no freaking way. If I pull up this freaking clip, he's saying it wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Chile, bro. Hold on. Let's see. It better be freaking Chile.
To pronounce with the Spanish pronunciation, the name of the country, Chile.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I told you guys. Everyone's trying to troll me in the chat. I told you it was Chile, not Chile or Chili's. Probably would have said Chili's. Like if I really didn't know what it was, and that would have been the big mistake. But I feel like I heard this on a TV show somewhere. Someone say Chile, and that's where it's always stuck in my mind. Got that one right, bro. You doubt your boy too much. You doubt your boy too much. BTOG, is that one moving? This is the Dogecoin treasury. That one's up 4%. Nothing too crazy. It did hit $1. Now it's at 54 cents. AMD just below 173. Yeah, see, I'm telling you, it's a toxic relationship. You guys want me to say the thing wrong so that you can make fun of me for your dopamine. To say, just the same reason you want me to be late. You want to be able to engage in the dopamine of saying, hey, Amit, you're late. Or, hey, Amit, you don't know how to talk. And it's like you're preying on my downfall when it comes to pronunciation. It's okay. I get it. I'm just saying, I'm not going to let English be my downfall. Not as an American citizen. No way. No freaking way. It is pretty good dopamine though. Like it's just like you watch this guy who speaks for a living who can't say freaking words. I get it. It's funny. And the other reason it's funny is because it's authentic. Like when I can't say a word, it genuinely, like when I said hanger over hangar, or no, I said hangar instead of hanger, and it's spelled G-A-R. I'm like, okay, that's a gar. And then you guys are like, no, it's hanger. It's just like the way the word. I'm like, oh, that genuinely, I didn't know that. So it's not like I'm doing it as a joke. But on the things I know, like Chile, I'm gonna say it correctly. Your Spanish is really bad, dude. My Spanish is so bad. Shout out to Mr. Garcia. He tried to teach me Spanish for like 5 years. Just didn't care, bro. Just didn't care. Whenever I got into Spanish class, I just did not care. Like there was no motivation to really learn Spanish. And as a result, it was kind of 5 wasted years, to be honest. But if I had some financial literacy, that would have been a little different. Would have been different. Is MicroStrategy moving? Misty is going to be paying its dividend pretty soon. Misty at 2102, MSTR at 409. Last dividend was 123. I think it's going to be higher because MSTR had a really good month, even though it's come back down because Saylor did the ATM. But I think that distribution should be better than 123. You could have done some Duolingo. Yes, I could have. Well, Duolingo was, when I was in high school, Duolingo wasn't really, Rosetta Stone still was big when I was in high school, like 10 years ago. You guys remember Rosetta Stone? Like that was like a legit thing. But then Duolingo, I don't even know, is Rosetta Stone, are they still alive? Wow, that thing is still there. Dude, look at their membership thing. This is why Duolingo is wiping the floor out of these guys. Look at this, bro. The first thing you do when you get on their website is, hey, buy our product. Like they are just trying to milk as much money as they can because they probably aren't surviving in a social media age, You are such a Drake fan. Drake did use Rosetta Stone as one of his lyrics. So yes, that's another reason I know Rosetta Stone. Okay, let's listen to Ed Yardeni, get his thoughts on the market, and if he thinks this week will be decent to justify the multiple we're at on the S&P.
Tend to focus on the headlines, and the headlines tend to be about Washington, and they tend to be kind of off-putting, maybe depressing sometimes. But I've observed that it's amazing how well the U.S. economy and stock market have done despite Washington.
Right. Ed, have you changed your views on the effect of tariffs on the whole equation? Because you were, where you started the year, what'd you say, 7,000?
7,000, yes.
So the tariffs threw you.
They did.
You were a little bit of trepidation there. You didn't go below 6,400 on the S&P.
No. I mean, my thinking was that it's still a bull market, but I had to recognize that
You might be right at 7,000 when it's all said and done.
Yeah, it may very well be. I mean, we seem to be in a slow motion melt up right now, where the market just kind of gradually goes up every single day, and no matter what. And I think the market since April 8th, April 9th, when Liberation Day was postponed, the market has been basically focusing on the economy, focusing on the fact that maybe we don't need lower interest rates. Maybe inflation isn't going to pop up as much as was of concern. And all in all, the earnings story is amazing. I mean, earnings first quarter came out about twice, the growth rate came out about twice as much as expected, and it could happen again in the second quarter. So companies are earning money.
Because it's been the same economy that you're talking about in the economy of 3.5 years. I think the idea was that the economy is going to be adversely affected by all these policies. Would you say that that's not the case, or it's still to come?
Well, look, we started out in 2022 with the notion that the economy was going to go into recession. I wasn't in that camp. I thought the economy would be resilient. The economy's over the past few years has put up with a pandemic, with supply disruptions, with inflation, with the Fed tightening, and now with tariffs. And I guess
that is a big point, bro. This economy, through everything we've gone through, absolutely has been able to withstand tariffs, pandemic, Russia, Ukraine, everything going on. And so, you know, the one argument against the bears as well is like, hey, everything's a bubble. Well, it's like we've gone through 3 separate things that have, you know, definitively created massive pain in supply chains, inflations, etc. And we've held strong because there is this tailwind that the bears don't like to acknowledge, which is called A&I, and that is keeping earnings afloat. If earnings weren't afloat, this market would be down. But earnings are doing pretty okay, and as long as they continue to do okay, then I think we continue to maintain this momentum.
View was that tariffs would be disturbing, but on the other hand, the evidence of the past few years is don't underestimate the strength of the economy, the resilience of the economy, and particularly the labor market.
So what would knock the stock market off its, the glide path it seems to be on? Could it be an inflation number this week?
Well, we do certainly are back to high valuation multiples. We're back to where we were before the correction, about 22.
3% inflation would a print above 3%?
I think if we suddenly saw that, you know, we just have to be patient, the tariffs will have some impact on inflation. But I think everybody agrees it's a one-shot deal, so I'm not even sure that would be that off-putting. I think what tariffs have done, they haven't necessarily raised inflation. They've kept inflation from getting down to 2%. I think without the tariffs, we would have been at 2%. Now
I just think it's an issue that the economy is able to absorb it, not that it's actually going to, I mean, it should be actually raising prices, but you're just saying the economy is absorbing it. It's not that it's actually preventing inflation from happening.
No, the tariffs you're saying? Yeah. No, the tariffs must have some sort of an inflationary impact. But at the same time, they are a tax, and taxes tend to be deflationary. So there's kind of offsetting issues there. But I think the economy is so huge that on balance, the import side of it just isn't having much of an impact on inflation.
How much of it is these producers or the retailers or others keeping prices lower because they're afraid to raise prices to draw the ire of the president?
I think there's a lot of that going on. But what's really remarkable is that analysts aren't predicting that profit margins are going to be shrinking in the second quarter. That's
how much do you, to the extent that you think the tariffs are actually helpful, or that these new trade rebalances are helpful, so the idea that General Motors or Ford or somebody else is going to start to sell cars in Germany, how quickly do you think that we'll see a benefit if we see one at all? Well, and how big a benefit?
I think there's an immediate benefit when it comes to tax receipts. And I think that's what Trump really is excited about.
Tax receipts for the U.S., yes. No, I'm asking a different question. I'm saying, if you were to look at General Motors today, or any of the American companies that are now supposed to have easier access to parts of Europe that they didn't before, how quickly do you think that is going to actually show up in numbers for those companies?
I think it's going to take a while. I mean, these things...
Like years?
Not years, but a couple of years. Meanwhile, I think...
Not years, but a couple of years? It sounds like years, plural.
Okay, years, yeah. Okay. 2 years.
And then you think it becomes a meaningful part of their business in a different way?
I think there's a lot of moving parts here, and I think, yes, it'll be an important part of their business. But meanwhile...
And this is what Goldman Sachs said as well, is like, hey, if the tariffs do factor into prices, it's going to take a couple of years, but we do think inflation will be sticky at 3%. The Fed, remember, Jay Powell said last week he would have cut rates by now if we didn't have tariffs. He explicitly said we would have cut rates already. So that is one thing that maybe was a little bit of a strategic mistake by Trump. SMCI, by the way, up almost 8% right here, 7.5, which is that if they had waited for a couple of FOMC meetings to then launch their tariff mission, they would have got a couple rate cuts, which I think that is the biggest mistake so far of this presidency. Like on an economic perspective, if they had just waited until, call it May, let Jay Powell cut at least once and then do the tariff stuff, that would have been a little easier to navigate. But they went full throttle in February, and now they're dealing with Jay Powell maybe cutting in September. And then you have a question of, are companies going to actually raise prices, and are we going to see sticky inflation, as Goldman Sachs says? No one really knows the answer to that yet. But from the data we've seen, it's not showing up. It's not showing up so far yet in the data. 58.57 right here on SMCI. That is green, up 7%. Someone, by the way, just traded $11 million worth of ARM calls expiring January 2026. You got a sweep of ARM calls. Looks like they're pretty bullish on the semiconductors. 170 is your strike. So do you have some of these big option trades coming in when it comes to these other semiconductors? He didn't want to mess up the midterm, so he had to do it early. That's a fair argument. I do think he's so obsessed with getting rates down, though, that like maybe waiting at least a couple months could have potentially enabled a better chance to get a better yield curve in regards to tariffs. The one thing, though, that is important is if his whole journey was to be this kind of Joker type of figure in terms of cause a ton of chaos and then swoop in to fix it, yeah, it's probably good that he did it early versus later. Because imagine if it was like May or June and he introduced the Liberation Day tariffs after 6 months of like record-setting gains on all our portfolios, and then we all lost it in like June or July, right? In the middle of the year. I mean, we lost it in April, which is like, all right, 4 months into the year, and then you recover within a month, and then, you're kind of back to normal. Like if we lost it towards the middle of the year, and then you're just hoping that by the end of the year it recovers, I mean, it would have been pretty aggressive as well. So maybe it is good that like it happened when it did happen. But the fact that it happened, the fact that we all went on that journey, to me, is still crazy. NVIDIA back above 175. Dell right here getting some love as well, up 2%. AMD still holding just below 174. That went up a good 5%, 4.5% on the day. I think real estate stocks are going to start booming with cuts coming. Yes, I think that is the thesis on Open Door as well. Zillow right here, 81.43. That's up. Again, I'm just not convinced about Open Door, dude. I'm really not. The volume on this thing is 113 million shares. There are so many people trading this thing every day. I don't think there's a legit thesis here. I just don't. Like, I think if there was a legit thesis, there would be a better understanding of the actual business model. I think people are in it to run the hype, and the hype is starting to die down. Unless Open Door delivers a really good quarter, I think it's all hype. I really don't think there's any juice here. Can't deny they have a lot of cash. Can't deny they have this new business model with agents, but their margins still aren't good. They're not going to be massively profitable. And rate cuts, yeah, that might be a little bit of a tailwind, but what? That's taking Open Door to $15. Like I don't see that. I don't see it. That's why I'm an ARKT. Yes, that is also not a horrible name for the rate cut proxy. Now, this one lost some of the pump. It was at 19 last week, back down to 14.94. This one still heavily shorted as well, so could be another play. They're about to deliver their first EBITDA adjusted profitable quarter. Yeah, but what does that mean? Like, why should anyone care is the question. Right? Like, realistically, what does that mean for the, like, people are touting this and they're not explaining the implication of this. Does that mean the stock goes to $82, right? Like, people are just touting these stats. Open Door is about to become an EBITDA profitable. Okay, so what? Like, why? Why does that matter? And what does that mean for the company? Does that stop the reverse split? Does that change the narrative? Are they going to have a second EBITDA adjusted profitable? Like there's so many missing parts to that statement that everyone's touting because they're just parroting the same stuff they see Eric Jackson tweet. And they're like, all right, well, if he said it's going to be adjusted EBITDA profitable, that's a good thing. All right, let's go buy it. It's like, I don't think there's a lot of intellectualism in that community. There's just people parroting the same shit. And if they deliver a monster quarter, then maybe there is a lot more to be looking forward to. But I would rather wait for that quarter to see what actually is going on here. SMCI, by the way, ripping, absolutely ripping. Wow, 9%, 8.2. It was at close to 8.4%, and that is green. That is green. Yeah, I mean, this quote by Charlie Munger is also very present when it comes to, look, I'm not hating on EBITDA profitability because it is one metric for companies that are in massive growth phase to show the market, hey, Like, we know we're not GAAP profitable yet, but we're delivering you a lot of top line growth. So look at our adjusted EBITDA profitability, because we're going to get to GAAP net income, but don't ignore the fact that if you just take away a couple things, we are already profitable, and we're giving you the growth to subsidize the time that you are waiting for actual net income, right? So like adjusted EBITDA profitability is not the worst thing in the world, but my question is, does Open Door even have a plan to get to GAAP net income? Because their margins are disgusting. They're like less than 6% for a tech company. That's not really tech company margins. So it's like what changes their margins to the upside that makes you feel adjusted EBITDA profitability will turn into GAAP net income? And I don't know exactly if we have that timeline, or at least that like framework of thinking of the Open Door thesis in a more meaningful way. I feel like it's more of a trade than an investment. At least that's my intuition. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe earnings crushes it, and I have to acknowledge that. But I'd rather do that after earnings, not before earnings, when it's just like getting hyped up. S&P 637, Misty 20.95, Zillow 81.51, SMCI still holding 8%, Tessie just below 324, Grab 529, and then SoFi, that one's also down a little bit. Nebius is down, Pinterest is up, Nvidia still below 175 here. Premiums are juicy, been making money selling puts on Open. Yeah, look, the premiums are good. Obviously, if you get assigned, you just have to be okay with holding the shares. But the premiums aren't that bad. What is better, rolling a call close to expiry or now if it's in the money? So usually the rule of thumb is you wait till you break even. So if you have a 175 call on Nvidia that expires this week, but you got paid $3 for it, then realistically waiting till 178 is not the worst thing in the world. That's when like you should probably definitely roll. Obviously, rolling now is also convenient, but if you don't need to roll now and think that you have a couple days left or a couple months left, whatever's on your contract, break even, which is the strike price plus the premium you got paid, is when most people roll. Or if you just think it's about to go, if you think NVIDIA is going to deliver a blockbuster quarter, this thing's going to 180, then roll it right now, right? Don't waste your time. It's really around your perception of what the earnings will look like. I think NVIDIA is going to have a good quarter. I don't know if they're going to give her that much more momentum. I mean, she's up more than 50% in the past 4 months from the April lows. I don't know if they really give her 195s at the end of August or 190s. I could see 180, 185. Maybe I'm a little bit too conservative. But I think it might take a little bit of time before we see 200. SMCI, though, I think is really liking whatever AMD said last night or whatever the article reported last night. It's almost at $60. When's the last time? Dude, remember we were day trading SMCI when Chris and Steve were like, SMCI is the next best thing since sliced bread? When was that? That was February, right? Yeah, February was 65. And then it fell all the way to 27. That's when they had all the accounting errors. And then they got a new accounting for, that's when Ernst & Young left them and all that stuff. And now they're right back to those February highs, almost. I bought it at like 35. I sold it at 42 roundabout. So I made like $3,000 on it. And then I didn't touch it since then. But for those that have been in it, and SMCI has a pretty big retail following. Because remember, this stock was at 120 a year ago. So it got a lot of people into it. The stock was at freaking $4 in 2023. So this one's had a very, very nice run. I don't have any big take on Applied Materials. I don't know much about the company. So no big take on this. How much are they up year to date? Their earnings have been pretty strong. Year to date, they're up 15%. So underperforming some of the other semis, but not like an Intel by any sense. But yeah, just don't know that much about Applied Materials. Matthias says, I was buying leaps in February and March, and they're all at plus 70 to 90% at this point. Not bad. Not bad at all. I don't think Chris, Steve, or Matt are still in SMCI, but they did trade it back in February. Wow, look at Tanner. Comes into the stream, says PayPal. Tanner, you're not even long PayPal anymore. You're not even long pay. Why do you care? PayPal's new pay with crypto. Any thoughts here? We talked about it in the morning. I mean, I think it's good for PayPal to do it. It's not like, I think it's inevitable. They have to be able to accept crypto payments. But I don't know, dude. PayPal's just been PayPal. There's not a lot of growth. They have tried to put out some new products. So one could call that product velocity that is starting to ramp up. I don't know if tomorrow is the quarter where they change the narrative. But they're growing like 5% year over year, dude. And they're buying back their stock and the street doesn't. I mean, they're buying back almost 10% of the float and the street doesn't care. So it's weird. It's not a bad company by any sense of the imagination at all. And Alex Chris is a hell of a CEO. So it's like, it's just kind of been PayPal. What are they up year to date? I think they still are up year to date. Year to date? No, never mind. They're down 10% year to date. So PayPal is still down year to date, which means, you could imagine some upside if they have any meaningful quarter. Maybe they pull a Deckers. Deckers was down 50% year to date, and then Deckers got a 20% move on earnings because they jumped up. But maybe if PayPal just beats expectations, you get some love. Street's expecting on PayPal. Let's pull it up. On PayPal, the street wants $8 billion of revenue and $1.30 of EPS. $1.30 of EPS. They were at 94 in January. Yes, that's correct. So this one has still been down. Tanner says, sorry, I'm late. I was enjoying my 12 hours of sleep. Dude, I got 5 hours and 5 minutes as per my Fitbit. So I need to catch up. Well, not 12 hours though, dude. I don't think I could ever sleep for 12 hours. I mean, I could sleep for 12 hours if it's like a Saturday, but on a weekday, my body naturally, I don't even need an alarm anymore. I naturally get up around 5:30. Like it's just, even if I sleep late, 5:30 is like when I'm conditioned to wake up. Palantir 158, and then Tessie, wow. She went to 327. Huh. Almost recovering some of the losses from it. Was at 330 on earnings. So Tesla's not really letting itself stay down for too long. 327, dude. Again, that Samsung deal, I think it's super bullish. I don't think it changes the earnings or anything, but if the stock trades on qualitative stories, the qualitative stories that Tesla's getting ready to make sure they have plenty of chips for S-curves that are going to take place, if not in 2026, then the beginning of them, hopefully in 2027. And when that happens, I think there will be a lot of excitement for Tessie. Trump tweeted, what did Mr. Donnie T say? All right, he said, just spoke to the acting Prime Minister of Thailand and the Prime Minister of Cambodia. I am pleased to announce that after the involvement of President Donald J. Trump, both countries have reached a ceasefire and peace. Congratulations to all. By ending this war, we have saved thousands of lives. I've instructed my trade team to restart negotiations on trade. I have now ended many wars in just 6 months. I am proud to be the president of peace. Okay, so I saw the headline last night that Thailand and Cambodia are announcing a ceasefire. I'm not going to lie. I had no freaking clue that Thailand and Cambodia were at war. Like I saw that last night before Trump tweeted about it just now. And I'm like, there was a war going on in Thailand. I had no clue what was happening there. I have no idea what their beef is. I don't know anything about the history of whatever they were fighting about. That's to my own ignorance. But yeah, Trump right here is taking credit for this ceasefire, which potentially might make it easier to land some of the trade deals with these two countries, Cambodia and Thailand. I think we have something with Thailand, but nothing with Cambodia. So that might be important. Some recent border conflicts. Yeah, I had no idea, dude. I had absolutely no idea. So, all right, Trump right there. Dude, he said, after the involvement of President Donald J. He's literally speaking in third person. And then he says, I am proud to be the president of peace. I have ended many wars in just 6 months. So there you go. Yeah, all the brokerages have the wrong day for grab. It's July 30th. Robinhood, Webull, they messed it up last time as well. So it's this Wednesday, July 30th. What do you think about SoFi? I think SoFi crushes. I don't know what the stock does. I think the Tesla, by the way, 328. She's really trying to make a move to 330. I think SoFi will have a great earnings. I just have no idea how the stock market's going to price it. But as long as nothing crazy happens tonight, you've got good macro going into earnings, which SoFi has not had for the past couple quarters. And so hopefully this is the one where you get a bit of a breakout. Bro only pays attention to what he wants to. Dude, how many of you guys knew Cambodia and Thailand were having border disputes? Like, I try to take in a lot of news from a lot of sources. That did not pop up not once last week. So when I saw the headline last night, I was like, well, what was going on there? I had no idea. Okay, now everyone's going to say they knew about it. Of course. Now everyone's going to say, of course, we knew about it. Well, I didn't. Did Hood announce the Bitcoin winners? No. Or at least if they did, I didn't get an email about it. So it was supposed to happen like last week. They might be taking longer. They did announce the gold winners a couple weeks later than expected, and they shipped out the gold bars to people who won it. But they did not announce the Bitcoin winners yet. Hood covered calls for the week. I would do 120 to 125. I think there is a world where if Hood crushes, we could see 120. Now, granted, I feel like I'm getting too optimistic because I don't think the earnings beat is going to be that massive, but I would play it safe, dude. If you're okay with the shares getting called away and rolling them, maybe 115, 110. But I think 120, if they really crush, they've got to really crush. And so if you want to be conservative, 120. If you want to be a little bit more risky, 115. And if they do get above 115, you can roll it out a month and get it closer to 125. By the way, guys, on Hood earnings, so again, I was saying this last night, I'm going to be in New York on Wednesday. I can't tell everyone why, but you guys will find out on Wednesday. So I'm going to be streaming the Hood earnings call on the street, I think. I'll be with Tanner and Roy. I'm going to try to find a location where I could sit down and have a little bit of peace and quiet, if there is any peace and quiet. But yeah, I will be on my camera with my hotspot in the city. I have some friends in the city, but I can't go to their house and then be at the location I need to be at in the same time. So it's going to be an interesting stream. Tanner and Roy will still be there to hold it down as well. But yeah, I'm trying to see if there's a WeWork location next to the location I need to be at, because I need to get to that location at a certain period of time. And so I'm going to be leaving the stream a bit early. But yeah, you might just see me walking through the street in New York, ringing my cowbell, discussing Robinhood earnings. I mean, that would be kind of fun, right? If we pump to 120, I am taking my laptop and I'm walking down New York City. And I'm just going to be ringing that damn cowbell for 120. But we got to get a massive earnings. You can't do it in Starbucks, bro. Most of the New York City Starbucks, they don't have space to sit. And then second of all, the Starbucks, Rock Lab down 4%. The Starbucks, I can't be loud, right? But if I'm on the street and I'm in a little corner, I mean, first of all, it's New York, right? Like, no one's going to judge you because it's New York. Everyone's chasing their dreams. They're doing crazy stuff. So it's like, it's not that embarrassing. But number two, it's like, no one can tell me to get off the corner or anything. So if I'm in a Starbucks, the employees might get mad if I'm loud. So I got to see. But earnings should be fun. Yeah, hopefully I don't get robbed, bro. Google says there's a WeWork close. Okay, so maybe I'll try to get into a WeWork. See if I can do that. What do you think about SoFi getting back into crypto? I think it's bullish. I don't know when there was. I did see some screenshots of SoFi level 1 options, like some of the UI being teased. People went into the code and they found it. So crypto and level 1 options should be here, I think, by the end of the year. I don't think it's going to take them until 2026. And if it is, I think that's definitely very bullish. Just to get another source of revenue. Google, by the way, slowed down 1%. So hopefully Noto gives us some inclination of it. But now, granted, how many people are going to be trading crypto and options on SoFi? I don't know. But the fact that at least some people will have the ability to should be good for the invest platform, which should not be the worst. Yeah, my stream will be running, so I might jump off the stream. But, Tanner, Roy, and I do a joint stream every time. So Tanner and Roy will still be there, even if I jump off. And so we'll have the chat still be open. It would be kind of fun though to walk through New York City ringing the cowbell, bro. Talking about robbing it. Like that would be fun. That would be fun. We don't have any big earnings today. I think we have Waste Management after the bell. Let me see what companies were in the morning. I didn't think there were that many. And then tomorrow's the big one. Okay, we actually had some earnings. We had Booz Allen Hamilton. So they had earnings today, along with Charter Communications. They missed by 1% on EPS, beat by 2% on revenue. Revenue's down 1% year over year. EPS is up 7%. Ticker symbol BAH. That stock is down 5%. Consulting firms are not really surviving as much as they were, especially with a lot of the Doge contract cancellations. And then you had Charter Communications, which also had earnings. They beat on revenue, missed on EPS, missed by 6%. EPS up 8% year over year. Revenue up 1% year over year. Charter, that stock's also down about 3%. Okay. So there you go. That's what you got on Charter. Tesla's pumping. Are we really pumping? 330. Are we back? Are we back? 327. Okay, it hit 328.45. Wow. Hit 328.45. Walk down Times Square, ringing the cowbell and yelling Hood 120 currently right now, nonstop. Dude, I'd do it. If Vlad gives us 120, I'd do it, bro. 120. Because 113.44 was the high. Even if we get back to 115, that would be really exciting. NVIDIA 175, AMD back to 174. Because if we get to 115 again, I think the street's taking it to 120. But they've got to deliver a type of earnings that makes it undeniable that the stock has to go higher. And I think they will, but I'm also like, maybe they come in line with expectations and stock's already up 3x. You can't get greedy and kind of just sells off. And I think that's okay as well. So hopefully not the worst thing. Use your phone to stream, not your computer. I was thinking of that, but like, I might just have to share my screen on a bunch of different like things, like to share the CNBC coverage, to share Legend, all that stuff. So I don't know. We'll see. If I can find a space to sit, I think it'll be fine because it's not going to be that big of a deal. And my hotspot tends to be pretty decent in New York, so I think it should be okay. Let's see. Do we have anything else? Donald Trump's lawyers asked judge to order Rupert Murdoch to be disposed within 15 days in defamation lawsuit against Wall Street Journal. Wow. They are really going after the Dow Jones. So Dow Jones is the parent company of the Wall Street Journal. Trump's suing them for $10 billion based on the Epstein stuff. And Dow Jones came out with a statement last week and they said, we have no problem fighting Trump in court. We are very confident in our reporting. But it looks like Trump lawyers are starting to get a bit more aggressive with dealing with this lawsuit. Yeah, Tanner, definitely you host a stream for the actual call because I'm going to have to leave. So you can easily share my screen if I'm like sharing something, but Tanner will be hosting the actual call. Tesla back to 328. Back to 328. What did you guys say on the poll? What did I say on the poll? Oh, no, we already closed that poll. Okay, so let's do this poll right here. This is an important one as well going into this week. Do you think Hood pumps or dumps? What do we think? Pumpy or dumpy on Hoodie? I think it's going to be 70-30. You guys are going to say pump. 70-30. You guys are going to say pump. Okay, so this headline did come out this morning as well. Open Door is going to be postponing the reverse stock split vote because there is a world in which I imagine they think they'll be eligible to not have to reverse stock split if they're over $1. Open Door now goes red on the day. They might still do the stock split just because they don't know if they can hold on to the momentum. Remember, you have to be over $1 to stay listed on the NASDAQ. So they're postponing that vote, which is bullish because a reverse stock split is never bullish. But if they don't think they can keep the momentum, they might have to do a 10-for-1 split. And then this stock will be $24 instead. 60-40 pump. 60-40 pump on hoodie. Do you have an opinion on Dutch Bros? I have no idea. This is the only loser that Matt has in it. This is like down like 15% from when Matt got it. I've never had them. I think when I come to Vegas in September, I'll try them. I know they're big out there, but I've never tried them. Their growth looks amazing. They're growing 29% year over year, so growth isn't bad. But for some reason, they've been selling off over the past couple months. All right, let's see what else we have. And any other core news? Oh, we got Jameson Greer. So this is one of the core negotiators with the United States. Let's get his take on what happened with China and why they're re-engaging in negotiations, and then we'll keep going from there. Again, both of them, I believe, are in Stockholm with Vicent, who's trying to get a better deal with China.
The EU deal, whether they were net positives for both countries, net negatives, whether someone wins, someone loses, do consumers lose? Is it a good thing for the country in your view? I mean, that's obviously you think it is, but tell us why.
It's an amazing thing for our country. For 70 years, we followed a trade policy that maybe at a certain time made sense, but ultimately the net result was other countries had higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers on the United States. We had a very open economy, and a lot of it resulted in offshoring of manufacturing and jobs to other countries. President Trump is now reversing that through these deals. We're essentially reaching settlements with countries that are good for them and good for us, where we get to keep some level of tariff on the country, but we also open their markets to our exports. And this is how you get rid of trade deficits. It's how you create a manufacturing boom. So these are obviously huge net positives for America and American workers.
Go into some of the devil in the details for the EU deal. Is everyone going to be driving an American car now, and they're going to get rid of all the Mercedes and Porsches and Audis? How?
Correct. Every single European will be driving an American vehicle. No, but they are going to be reducing their tariffs. They're going to be accepting aspects of American auto standards. They're going to be reducing their tariffs on all industrial goods shipped by the U.S. So think chemicals, medical devices, et cetera. They're going to be reducing their tariffs on a number of agricultural goods that we make here in America. And we'll be able to have a 15% tariff on the EU. And this is important because we have a $235 billion trade deficit with the EU. President von der Leyen of the European Union, she was very straightforward. She said this deal was about trying to reach balance. They acknowledged the legitimacy of the American challenge that we face as America with our trade deficit. But now we're just on a great footing to have a really good partnership with the EU, following on the heels of the big NATO win from the president a few weeks ago. This positions us to take our relationship with the EU forward in a new and a better way.
Ambassador, I want to read you the Wall Street Journal's op-ed page this morning. This is their critique of the deal. They say the deal doesn't appear to address America's biggest commercial grievances with Europe, such as digital taxes, punitive regulation against U.S. tech firms, and such faux food safety rules as GMO restrictions and bans on hormones related to U.S. beef, nor does it require Europeans to pay more for drugs, one of Mr. Trump's longstanding complaints. It goes on to say that the spending that Europe's going to be enacting here in the U.S. was effectively going to happen anyway. What do you make of all of that?
So the spending was not going to happen anyway. We looked at the numbers together with our European colleagues, and they invest around, their numbers around 100 billion per year. They're going to essentially double or even triple that per year over the next part of the president's term. In terms of the LNG purchases, they buy about 80 billion a year. They're going to crank that up, that and other energy purchases to about 250 billion a year. So it's obviously more and better. That's just, those are numbers, that's math. With respect to trade barriers, I mean, there are always going to be challenges with other countries, but the EU has said that they're going to work with us on things like, mutual recognition of telecommunication standards, cybersecurity. So our networks and network equipment can talk to each other. They're going to streamline processes for certifications for pork and for dairy. So there is a lot of technical detail in here, including some of those what we call non-tariff barriers. And that is what we're looking at, right? Standards for autos, these kinds of things.
I think right here, essentially his argument is, hey, even if we don't get some massive commitment over the long term, there is a framework for a commitment. And that framework for LNG seems pretty obvious. It looks like they will increase their spend on LNG. That seems like the most basic thing that they could agree to. And then the idea of opening up the continent for a variety of different types of businesses, as long as that intent is there, which is the whole point of that $600 billion investment. It's not guaranteed, but the intent is that we're going to continue to invest. Maybe that's where Trump pulls this off. You know, I mean, it's very like not set in stone, the idea that they're going to spend trillions of dollars into the United States. But if they even spend half of that in gas and energy and a variety of different products, I don't think that's the worst idea. So if the market's assuming, okay, this is something that will play out not exactly as written, but in a way that is somewhat similar to what they're talking about, that's still a win, you know, even if they can't make it perfect. Here's an update from China right here on that 90-day pause that we have with tariffs as well.
Said practice has proven that through dialogue and consultation, we can properly manage contradictions. So the foreign ministry repeated that today, saying that the Sweden talks can reduce misjudgments and strengthen cooperation. And this comes after a weekend editorial with Xinhua, the state-run news agency, was playing up what it described as the mutual benefits of these talks, pointing to China processing export control applications. It didn't say specifically that that was about rare earths, but that's what it's about. And the rare earths were processed for U.S. industry. And then it's also mentioned that the U.S. lifted what it described as relevant restrictions on China. So that means that China, again, didn't explicitly say that this is about AI chips, but China does now have the ability to access H20 NVIDIA chips, which had been previously banned, at least the export to China. So in terms of the expected agenda items from a Chinese perspective, there's a lot of belief that we are going to see an extension of the August 12th deadline, possibly by 90 days. Also that China would push for a reduction in the so-called fentanyl tariffs. The Chinese believe that these tariffs that were put as sort of a punishment for their non-cooperation from the U.S. perspectives on fentanyl as unfair. And then the Chinese expectation is that the Russian oil purchases are going to come up just because the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent had flagged that as a talking point. State media, though, has already been flagging that they will be pushing back on that last point, saying that if Bessent uses this issue to put pressure on China, it will likely cause the newly established trade consultation mechanism to collapse. This is in the Global Times, the Communist Party paper, saying that China would not just go along with Russian oil cuts. Guys?
That would be pretty cool. If Bessent can get them to buy more of our oil instead of buying it from Russia, and then we got the EU buying more of our natural gas, we're going to have to give up something to get that to happen. And I don't think Bessent really cares that much about the oil. He probably cares more about the rare earth minerals. But that would be a hell of a job negotiating if they can get that to happen. Now, it's unlikely, given China wants to maintain good relationships with Russia, and that would be in part by buying their oil. But the NVIDIA part of this is the most important. If they can get a better agreement on rare earth minerals and tariff rates broadly by being able to say, hey, we took off the export controls from NVIDIA, we can put them on again if you guys really don't give us what we want, and then you guys, all your tech companies are going to have to deal with Huawei chips. I think that's going to be kind of the sticking point in this negotiation. Talks went until 12 a.m. last night. So hopefully in the next couple of days we get some updates, but it looks like Bessent is in Stockholm and trying to get some type of meaningful deal done. All right, folks, I think that is it for today. Ultimately, that EU deal pump that we got has kind of faded, which I think is okay. You got Tesla getting some moves, up 4%, SMCI up 7%, AMD getting some love right here as well, up 4% on the day, NVIDIA back to 175. Broader market, basically flat, and I think the reason for that is because earnings this week is going to determine where we go forward from here. And we're going to see. We're going to see how this plays out. Shout out to Jeremy, who just tagged me in this video. He has his grandson watching on the big screen. I'm telling you, I shared another video this morning of someone with their baby daughter watching the stream as well. These kids are going to be rich, bro. These kids are going to be so rich. Like inside of their subconscious, they are seeing candlesticks, dude. This is what I'm going to do when I have kids. I want to make sure my kids, they're not going to be watching, what's that show all these little kids watch? What's that thing on YouTube? Mrs. Rachel or whatever? Yeah, they're not going to be watching Rachel. My kid's going to be watching dad talk about the markets. That's what's going to happen. I'm not going to be watching Mrs. Rachel. What's the other one? Bluey on Disney Plus or something? Coco Melon. That's the one. Coco. Yeah, no Coco Melon in my household. These kids are going to be looking at candlesticks going up and down. And subconsciously, they will understand PE ratios and PEG ratios and freaking EBITDA multiples. Like, that's what we're going to be doing. That's what we're going to be doing. So super cool stuff. Shout out to Jeremy again. I just love getting these videos when people tag me in them. It's really cool for me to see kind of how you guys consume the content, and very, very humbling when you deal with your family as well. All right, word of the day. What do we got? Word of the day. Josh says everyone says that, then they have crying kids. Dude, it's going to be such an ego hit if my son or daughter's crying every time I put on my stream and they just want more Coco Melon. Literally, dude, it's literally, my wife's going to have to be like, they don't want to watch you. It's just that simple. They don't want to watch you. Word of the day is ilk. Ilk.
Ilk.
Family, class, or kind. I've heard of this word before. The forest echoed with the baying of beagles, foxhounds, and their ilk. I am hesitant to trust tabloid journalists and their ilk. Yeah, I think I've seen this word before. This is a pretty common word. So ilk is the word of the day. My daughter hates that I listen to pods every day. Again, that subconscious noise in the background. You never know how it can affect kids. Weren't there so many studies of just like when the kid is in the womb, like if you like play guitar or something, I read the study like years ago that like it makes the kid smarter or something. It's like all these different things that people have thought of, but there is some type of subconscious element to content consumption, especially from a young age. Bob B, thank you for the $20 super chat. Appreciate it. Thanks, man. Community. My Roth IRA hit 1.5 million. Wow. I had good stocks before I found your channel in January. Now I have other great stocks for the future. Absolutely incredible. Congratulations to you, man. 1.5 million in the Roth. Again, I talked about this a lot last night, and I think it's going to be a theme that continues for a long time, but you either have assets or you don't. And if you don't have assets, you need to get assets. Like, it's just that simple. There's been study after study that I've been looking at about the tale of two consumers in this country. And the consumer that has assets, they're able to hold up, they're able to maintain momentum, and especially as those assets are appreciating, they're able to gain more leverage. If you don't have the assets, your money's dying to inflation, and wages aren't going up enough to offset that. And then where do you go from there, right? So getting a Roth to 1.5 million, absolutely incredible. And I think that's the goal for all of us, just having more and more allocation into assets. Shout out to Jeremy. There he is. These kids in my family love listening to you. It's your energy. Appreciate you, Jeremy. For those that don't know Jeremy's story, Jeremy is OG friend of the channel. He'll be in Miami. He had a pretty complicated past. He was addicted to drugs, and Palantir was one of the first stocks that kind of got him out of that lifestyle. And he bought a lot of Palantir under $10, and he kind of changed his life. And now he's just fully focused on investing. So absolutely incredible stuff, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the channel. And your story is a massive inspiration. Just shows no matter where you are in life, there are so many different ways that the freedom and autonomy that investing can give you. Yes, now he's addicted to Palantir. Exactly. Can change your life. Change his life. Like I went to see my mom. I went to see her. I've never been to my mom's school that she works at, but before my grandparents left to India, we dropped them off at the airport on Friday. We went to see where she works at. And she was working in a certain district for about 15 years. And this new school came up to her, and they had an offer she just couldn't resist. And so they were kind of like Zucks. They poached her from her 15 years of work. And I went to go see her coworkers, and I met the principal at the school and the district VP. And they were just like, so your mom, she's talking about the stock market all day. I was just like, my mom doesn't work. She's not a full-time investor, but she's like constantly trying to tell her coworkers to invest because my mom has seen what has happened. My mom has never had savings ever. And now my mom is sitting on a good chunk of money that is appreciated really well over the past 12 months. And she's like constantly telling them to invest. And they've gone so far as to download Robinhood, but they haven't actually made the step to invest. And so so many people are afraid of doing it. So many people are afraid of taking the risk that if you are even somewhat in the game, much less, being able to benefit from this market that we're in, it's a big win. It's a big, big win. Yeah, dude, she tries to tell them about covered calls and like cash secured puts because she's selling those as well. And they're just so lost every time they're listening. She's like, what are you talking about? Because they've not even bought a stock before. So the average American, much less the average human being, does not know what it means to invest in equities. And if you even know anything about it, like you're so far ahead. And now it's just a question of propelling skills and trying to get more money to just plow into compounding assets. Because it's either that, crypto, or real estate. And I think crypto is a bit risky. Real estate, you just need a lot of upfront capital. The equity market, anyone can Google's earnings and make and have a informed understanding of, hey, is this a reasonable investment? And I think that's why equity markets are a real form of freedom. All right, folks, that's it. I'll be back today. No big earnings today. We do have Waste Management and a couple other companies, but tomorrow is the big day, and then Wednesday is the Super Bowl. So we will keep going from there. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I will see you guys later on the Market Close. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.